Smoke signals from around the campfire.
So we're going to do our usual campfire thing and invite a check-in. If you could keep it briefer than usual, because we've got more people here than usual. What's coming up for you? How are you feeling in a few words, or a couple of sentences, or a couple of minutes? Who would like to go first?
You can do it.
Ken,
Should I go?
off you go.
All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I went to 2 in-person events last week. They were great. One was a tribute to Laurel Canyon by local Washington, D.C. area performers, some of whom I am probably going to become friends with. And on the other one I saw, you might remember the group Was Not Was. They had a hit with Walk the Dinosaur. It was kind of surrealistic, big band, blood, sweat, and tears kind of thing. Don Was, leader of that, was also a producer. He has produced Bonnie Raitt, among other people. This is his new group, Don Was and the Penn Detroit Ensemble. What can I tell you about it? Sounds like it makes a big band jazz, Jimi Hendrix, soul, gospel, funk, a little bit of Latin in there. No English folk ballads, but I loved it anyway. And I met him afterwards and really enjoyed that. I'm still annoyed by offshore call centers with employees I can't understand. I don't know if you people in the UK get to deal with that also. I do have a question. I just got this uncut overview on Prince. I also got their one on the Smiths. If anybody knows of a really good CD overview of either of those, I'm interested in that. Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys is celebrating his 81st birthday on June 20th. We should all wish Brian Wilson, an absolute genius of pop music, a happy birthday. And Ray Davies of the Kinks is on June 21st. So lots of music birthdays.
Thanks. Could you
You want me to stop now? Is that it?
talking stick to somebody? We've got quite a lot to get through.
All right. Well, I'm sure I will have forgotten something, but
well, welcome to those who've joined us in the last couple of minutes. We've still got people flooding in, so yeah, if we could keep our check-ins very brief.
All right, so I'll close with that. I mean, I know how to reach you in other ways.
Would you like to nominate somebody else?
Wow. All right, let me see who's here. God, there are so many. There's a lot. Jesus.
Just pick a name.
Right. Who have I not seen in a long time? Andrew Ford. Don't know you very well. Speak. And I'm coming to you from Silver Spring, Maryland, just over the line from Washington, D.C. I've known PL for 40 years.
Hey, Ken.
Yeah.
Long time no speak. How you doing? I'm over here in Adelaide, Australia right now. Yeah.
Australia. Give my regards to Dobe Newton.
Sorry, Ken, I've had to mute you. We'll have to do the check-ins quite quickly.
Okay, we'll keep it short and sweet. Hey, Pete, nice to see you. What's going on for me right now? Hey, I'm doing good. Works thin on the ground, but it means I'm just following my passion really and just figuring out where I'm going from here and what I'm doing. Quite envious of Campout coming up soon. Would love to be there, but I'm on the wrong side of the planet right now. So I'll watch from afar and wish you all the best. Good to be here. Definitely a topic I love. Big one on letting go of the Rockefeller medicine system. So interested to hear what's been said today. So yeah, thanks. Be good to connect with everybody. Keep it short and sweet.
Cheers, Andrew. Would you like to nominate somebody?
Sure. Ruth.
Hi. Morning, everyone. I'm a bit in and out this morning, but I'm, here. I'll just turn my camera off if I have to move around a bit. Turn it back on again when I sit down. Yeah, I'm good. Just, I might disappear suddenly for some reason, but it's just something going on with the family. So I'll be here as best I can. Nice to see you all.
Good to see you, Ruth.
And I, Zelda.
Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, what can I say? I seem to be drifting towards the UK. I'm going to be at Campout, so I'm hoping at least some of you are going to be there. I know there's a couple already that are going to be there. 3, I can see you're going to be there. And I'm giving a workshop for the first time. Yeah, for the first time in Oxford, which should be interesting. But the amount of work that has to go into getting it all put together has just been a bit kind of like, what? If I was getting paid for all these hours, I'd be very rich now. But anyway, but it's curious. It's kind of not come out of nowhere, but it's an interesting development, drifting Englandwards. Who shall I pass it on to? Karina.
I knew you'd choose me, Zelda. Hi, everyone. I think this is only the second Sunday session I've attended. I've usually got Airbnb guests leaving on a Sunday and can't make it, but they're leaving tomorrow. And I'm very interested in learning a bit more about homeopathy. So looking forward to... Hold on. Oh, just as I'm introducing myself, my mum needs to walk past. Just a second. Yeah, so I've just come back from Greece, had a lovely time there. I really struggled to adjust to the weather in the UK when I come back from Greece, but we've got a lovely sunny day today. So yeah, making the most of it today. Okay, so that's me. So, Diane.
Thanks, Karina. Yes, hello from sunny Bournemouth. The advertising is actually working today because we do have sunshine. Yes, this morning I've already had one conversation with a friend of mine, and we've decided that we're both melancholics who practice avoidance techniques on a regular basis. So from your avoidant to melancholic, I shall now pass over to Poppy.
Good choice. Nice link. Hi everyone. I'm in Dublin, in Hove, and this is the first of like 5 upcoming trips here. So a bit like you, Zelda, I've done the opposite. Well, I'm going to Ireland. I know you're not in Ireland, but I've just been in Donegal. It's been amazing on a desert island. And I trained as a homeopath with Caroline. Caroline trained me and then was my supervisor for some time. So I have been practicing homeopath for 20 years, but I'm not doing it anymore because I'm a family constellations facilitator, and I'll be doing that at Campout. And today I'm feeling really good. I went down to the beach this morning and I'm go into Dublin town today, which I never do when I'm here. So yeah, and I will pass to Caroline.
Hey, can I just check my sound's okay?
Yeah.
Can I get a thumbs up from you, Poppy? Good. Oh, it's nice to be here. I have joined a couple of times before, but it's always on the morning when I like to go and do yoga and enjoy Sundays. So yeah, I've known Poppy for years. I've known Sam for years. I went to Campout last year. Absolutely loved it. Got a niece's wedding on Campout weekend this year, so can't come sadly. Yeah, and I'm happy the sun's shining in North London because it's been pretty grim after these, I'm guessing the solar flares, who knows. But I am going to hand over to, I'm looking at everyone's names. Let me just flick to another screen because I think everybody's spoken. Lee, is that how you say your name? Lee Wallace? Yeah.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Oh gosh, what's I going to say? It's nice to be here. I feel a little bit more connected now. I was feeling quite isolated earlier, and it's the last day of my son's holiday of school, and it's absolutely beautiful. Yeah, but I still have feelings of not, just processing. So yeah, health is a massive thing for me, and the kind of clash between the NHS and the alternative community. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting more insight into using homeopathy myself, I suppose, and how it works. Sorry, that was a lot. So next, who can go? Brian? Has Brian gone yet? No. Okay.
No, okay. Can you hear me? Okay, well, I'm just getting used to my second week of retirement. I think it's just I think time management and motivation without the focus of work on Monday morning is going to be an issue. So I need to sort of get myself a little bit more motivated and disciplined. But I've been generally plodding away. I've been doing a little bit of work on what's my first ever car. Everybody wishes they kept their first ever car. The thing is, I did. I'm just getting to the point of just getting it done up to be a nice little vehicle of historic interest. Hopefully, just as a daily driver. So it's now homeopathy. I'll listen, but to some extent, it's something I would be skeptical about. And just to listen, maybe change my mind. But I'll listen politely. I think to say that much. Right. If I pass on my understanding of Greek letters is Katerina, it looks in the first just to English-speaking eyes as Katepeva.
Katerina. Yeah, it's like the Russian. Yeah, it's the same.
Yes, I can recognize the row and the new that looks like looks like a V. So, and I can understand that is Podos is actually roads. So, Katerina.
Yes, thank you very much. It's been a while that I haven't seen you people that we've met and the new ones. So it's like a usual summer day on Paros, morning swim, some tourists around, and looking forward to this session with all of you. I'm very fond of homeopathy. I'm a patient myself, so I've changed a few practitioners, and hopefully this will lead to an Ithaca on the planet and the inner search for meaning and the journey. Thank you all.
Katerina, would you like to pass over to Tamara, Lucy, or Graham, or Sammy?
Tamara, please. Yeah,
very
trying.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Sorry, I missed the very beginning of this. I've been very excited. I got up at 5 today. Woke up naturally at 5. It's a summer thing. It never gets dark. I went out to look at the stars, and the sky was still lit up with the fading sunshine. And of course, we're quite north here, so it's nearer to the North Pole where the sun never sets in winter. So it's so exciting, and I took a series of photographs with the landscape. No 2 seconds are the same in the Lake District, and that's part of its charm. But anyway, I'm excited because I bought a camper van. My experience now is that the flow has been very blocked. I have been able to get workmen to work on the damp and the falling down roof and the chimney and all the stuff outside. I haven't been able to negotiate all sorts of deals, and suddenly it happened. I was socializing with the local people here, and it happened through serendipity and good advice and friendly people, helpful people. And I feel very embedded in this place here. I've only been here 6 weeks, and I was loving it. But I bought a camper van yesterday. Within 16 hours of hearing about it, I've done the deal. It's being delivered on Thursday. It's an old Toyota, and it's absolutely fantastic. And it's like, I knew the minute I heard about it, I was going to get it. And I rang up, I went to see it, and I drove over there, and I drove around in it, and it just felt like home. And it's a small one, that's what I wanted. I don't want a big thing that you can't drive and negotiate the tiny little lanes and the huge potholes. But I had a lovely experience taking further down the coast than I've been, and I encountered and conversed with a number of very different people. And what you meet and traveling around and just talking to people is just wonderful. And I've got a whole huge bag of elderflowers to make elderflower cordial, some of which I might bring to Campout and share a little bit because it's so delicious. It's a local thing. And I pass to whoever's not spoken.
You've got a choice of me, Graham, or Sammy, or Jeff, who's just joined us.
You're very faint, Pete.
Sorry, Tamara. You've got a choice of myself, Graham, Lucy, Sam, or Jeff. We're just doing very quick.
The last one, whoever that was, Lucy.
Jeff Greentree.
Was it?
Yes, hi everybody. I've been here a couple of times before as well, but back in the days of the craziness, back in sort of 2021, whenever it was. It's nice to see you, Pete. I was at Campout as well, so it was lovely to see a lot of you there. Yeah, I'm actually doing really, really well. I'm just back from an absolutely disastrous trip to Sri Lanka, which I will tell you all about in our homeopathy talk, because it's very relevant. And I'm feeling really blessed to be back in Europe and actually feeling like we've got it pretty good, actually, for all the crazy stuff that goes down. We have the most beautiful scenery here in Europe and the UK. I'm up on the top of Helvellyn at the moment in the Lake District, and I'm very, very, very happy. Very happy.
I can see you.
I am very happy to be out of the humidity. I just don't cope in the tropics at all. So for me, landing in the kind of British weather was perfect. I'll pass on to Jeff, was it?
Thanks, Lucy.
Oh, hello, good morning. For some reason, you haven't got a picture of me. Am I not coming up on the screen? Can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, good morning. I'm in sunny Berkshire, and I'm very happy today. My son's just stayed overnight, my son Ananda, and he's going to come to Campout this year. So I'll talk to Pete more about that. But anyway, I'm very happy that he's going to come. And some of you know, I broke my leg, and today I walked unaided without a crutch for the first time, or rather not carrying a crutch. So I'm having a good day, turned a corner, and the sun's out because the weather's been bloody dreadful here, as some of you know. And I'm very glad the sun's out. So it's good to be on Zoom and to see you all. And that's it for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Sammy or Graham?
I think you better nominate someone, Pete, because I've got no pictures. I'm going to have to sort out my visuals on that.
Okay, Graham, go. Good to see you, Graham.
Hi, Pete. Good morning, all. I am back in London. I have been enjoying some fabulous insights with Ruth in Sheffield for a few days. Still processing my darkness and my fears. Wanted just to hide away, but was looking forward to this talk, so I have joined to gain some insights again from some wonderful healers. Yeah, and if I didn't come, I'd just be spiraling in my own, I don't know, fears and doubts, which I managed to go almost 2 days without nicotine, and almost went mad. So I'm really cutting down on the nicotine, but yeah, thankful for this group to touch in and keep in touch with wonderful people. So that's me. I don't want to talk too much. Passing it over to Sammy. I don't know if you can hear me, Sammy, but you're next to check-in by our check-in procedure.
So what do I do?
Just a few words about how you're feeling.
Oh, you can hear me then. So hello there. I'm an acupuncturist in London and it's sunny, and I've just started to delve a little bit into homeopathy. I'm not a homeopath. I've started taking a few remedies here and there. I met a homeopath. It's been very helpful, and I'm just intrigued by it because it's something that I don't really have. Probably I won't get. I don't know if I'm going to study it. I don't think I will. I'm a herbalist, and I'm quite busy, you know, in this never-ending expansive course, you know, of study that you never stop doing. You know, what I mean, it's just so. You can never learn everything about Chinese medicine and Japanese, you know, acupuncture and medicine. So I've been pretty busy with that, but I'm very, as I say, I'm very interested in homeopathy, and I've got a little kit, the little kit from Ainsworth's with 45 remedies or whatever it is, you know, and so looking forward to this. I came across Caroline Gaskin's website and have seen a few of her lectures online and everything, and you know, very interesting stuff, and wanted to meet her, but I found somebody. She couldn't see me, and then I found somebody. Meanwhile, I found somebody else. Turns out somebody I worked with was a homeopath, so I started seeing them, and you know, it's wonderful. The more homeopathy, I don't know, it's just great. I don't know a huge amount about it, but what I, you know, so far, it's just I love it. It's fabulous.
Thank you, Sammy. As just me to check in, and I think just to keep it quick, I've been in between all the work on Campout. I've been very much focused on the programming this week. It's coming along nicely. We've got some amazing things coming up, so very excited about that. Enjoying the Greek weather. It's just 30 degrees and gorgeous on Paros. Trailblazers movement.org. We're trying to tempt a few people to stand at the general election, or not. We'll see how that all unfolds. Have a look at the website if you haven't seen it yet. I'm making music. We're working on some campfire songs for singing, sort of updating the tradition of activism from the era of Peter, Paul and Mary, Pete Seeger, the Weavers, all those wonderful sort of US activists from the 60s, but giving it a spiritual side too. So we're working with Gitika, who some of you may have met at last year's Campout, and that's really exciting as well. That's coming together quite nicely. We're doing it virtually. So yeah, lots more I could say, but I'm really excited to hear what's happening on this session. So Caroline, I'll hand over to you. Thanks for the check-in, everyone.
Thank you. I've just been making a few messages as notes as we go along, just about things people have said. I really love their introductions because it gives a sense of flavour, perhaps what people would like to hear. And one of the things, I guess, as a homeopath is that we learn to be very adaptive. And me, Poppy, Sam, who I hope is coming on. I've just messaged her, Sam Tinton. She may have thought it was 10:30, but I'm sure she'll be here. And is, you know, as we said, we all met at Campout, and Lucy and I and Sam met, and we met Morven and Sarah, who was there. So there were 5 of us that just happened to find ourselves around the campfire. And when you said about singing, Pete, around the campfire, I remembered, I knew that. Why did I know that you were writing? And it was because I met Gitika the other day for a coffee and she told me about it. So I just thought, yeah, great. There is nothing like singing around the campfire. And she just reminded me of a time in 2014, so 10 years ago, when I did my permaculture design course. It's 2 weeks. For any of those of you who've done it, you'll know it. And yet you really push through and you usually do it. There's Sam, she's just coming on. And we were doing it in the middle of France, and we had quite an autocratic teacher for the permaculture space. And we kind of all rebelled around the campfire, singing raucous songs in the night when he wasn't able to hear us. So there's nothing like a kind of inventive space around the fire. And I'm sure, I mean, we know it's part of our evolution. So without further ado, I'll dive into chatting. I just want to see if Sam can get her picture up and if she can say hi. And then we were just going to introduce a little bit about how we got in, super quickly, about how we got into what we do. Sam, are you there to pop your...
I'm here.
Yay.
I'm just trying to get my video
Yeah.
up.
Cool. If you want to take a few seconds, that's fine.
Yeah, just give me a moment to try. For some reason, this
Yeah.
happened yesterday, didn't it? And couldn't
Yeah.
get.
Cool, don't worry. Well, look, Lucy, do you want to fire away on the top of Helvellyn? Because why not start this from the top of a mountain and shout really loud and tell everyone about it?
Okay, I'll go ahead then. Can you hear me, or is there wind? I mean, it sounds really quiet here. No, great. Okay, well, I'll start. I've got someone else to introduce. So let me just turn my screen around. How do I do that? Oh, no, that's sideways. Oh, goodness, what have I pressed? Here we go. So this is Maurice. He's at the top of Helvellyn with me. And Maurice is a 100% homeopathy dog. So healthiest dog alive. Gets himself, needs the vets regularly, but doesn't have to go because of homeopathy. So saved us a fortune. So we are here. Up the top of Helvellyn. And yeah, just very briefly, how did I get into it? Well, we were given homeopathy a lot as kids. Just, I think, 2-3 remedies. That's all we ever had. It was always arnica, belladonna, and rust tox. So you'd either hurt yourself, sprained something, or had a fever. And those 3 remedies, I swear, just got us through childhood. And then, yeah, and used it on the pets as kids as well. And then I was part of the story really was that I was in the military for quite a long time, and had quite a difficult time. And when I came out, I was sort of seeing counselors, therapists, doctors, all sorts. Just nothing worked. Tried everything. Spent a lot of money and a lot of time. Probably wasted quite a few years of my life as well. And eventually refound homeopathy, and it just worked straight away. Just from even before taking the first remedy, going in to see a homeopath who just sat and listened to me for an hour and a half. He actually cleared his diary that day. I was in such a sort of difficult place, and he said, right, just come in, move a couple of people around. And just that sort of attitude of care and just the availability, like our doctors don't have that time. So he sat and listened to me, and the sort of questions that he asked were like, well, no one's asked this before. This all makes sense. And even things I hadn't pieced together in my own head, I was like, gosh, this is starting to make so much sense why I feel the way I do. So I felt better when I came out the consultation room, but then the remedies obviously worked their magic as well. And that's how I got into it, really. I used to look at his books that he had during these consultations and just think, I would love to do that, but I can never do that. It just looks so complicated and magical. And how the hell does he narrow it down from thousands of remedies that work every time? I just don't get it. And I really started looking into it and studying it, and still thought, oh, I just couldn't do that. My confidence was quite low at the time. And then just I was just in the right place at the right time one day, and there was a homeopathy open day, and someone had posted something on an ex-army group about it, and along I went, and the rest is history, really. So that's how I got into it. I'll pass back to you, Caroline.
Well, that was really great. Thanks, Lucy. So one thing I just wanted to ask Pete, actually wanted to do a little PowerPoint share at some point. So could you make the 3 of us co-hosts? Is that possible? Yeah, I mean, I got into it in a different kind of way. I guess I went to see a homeopath when I was quite young. Friends said, I was at university, well, we called it art college in those days. A friend had been to see a homeopath, and she said what an interesting experience it was. And I went along for the experience and got a remedy and got a rash on my wrist, and it wouldn't go away. And I felt kind of like, she didn't really explain much to me about what she was doing, what she was giving me. And I felt it was like a bit of an experiment. And so I went away, and I, sometime after, not long after, probably a couple of years after or something, got pregnant. And I was seeing a herbalist then for the rash, because I felt like the remedies were not making it better. They brought it out of my body, and I didn't really understand that process. And now, of course, I understand that I had a lot of toxicity from all the art college stuff. You know, we weren't taught health and safety. We washed our hands with bleach after dyeing fabric, and we rinsed our hands with the seri wash from the screens if there wasn't any Swarfiga available. And I just got a rash, went to the doctor and got steroid cream. And I didn't know that I'd kind of pushed that deeper inside my system, that body's reaction telling me that something was wrong, that I shouldn't really be using these toxic chemicals on my body. And so the rash went away with the steroid cream. But then I went to see the homeopath, and it kind of burst out again. And I didn't know what was going on. Homeopath didn't explain much. So I went to see a herbalist, and he asked me if I'd ever used any chemicals. And I said, yeah. And he taught me to bathe my hands in Dead Sea salts, which I was pregnant. I had the Dead Sea salts really worked. And I now understand that actually what was going along all the time in the background is I was somebody who was quite estrogen dominant. And the progesterone of pregnancy is very healing. All of us need progesterone, by the way, guys, even you need a bit of it. It helps order our brains. We have progesterone receptor sites all over the body. And it's taken me years to kind of like understand all this, to know all this, because a lot of the learning in this space for all of us complementary therapists and our GPs about hormones is how dysfunctional we've become in the 20th and the 21st century as a result of all the things that are put into our bodies and our foods. And I know that this is an audience that is uncovering all that and can hear all that. So it's taking me a long time. And my parents were petrochemical people. They worked for ICI. They created a lot of the plastics, a lot of the substances that we have in our system now that are distorting the way we are. And I see homeopathy and other therapies I'd love to work towards an integrated space as being a solution. So my eczema on my hand, or contact dermatitis, as it actually was, cleared up with Dead Sea salts and having more progesterone in my body. But then I had a baby, and I was like, what am I going to do for him, for his health? And when he got a cough at 4 months old, I went to the doctor, GP, who said, here's a cough medicine with a sedative in it. I was like, I'm an art school punk. I am not giving my baby a drug like that. I'm sorry. I'd read The Politics of Breastfeeding by Gabrielle Palmer. I was fiery. I was like, I'm not going to do that. What do I do? So somebody somewhere said, go and see a homeopath. And I went to the local clinic and showed her my baby with his cough. And she wanted to know who he was and how he was. And she asked me, as Lucy said, all these questions about his cough and what kind of a person he was. And she prescribed holistically. So she looked at him and listened to how he was. And she gave him a remedy, which is a regular baby's remedy called Calcarb, and his cough went away. And just like Lucy said, the rest of it kind of is history. From that point on, homeopathy became our first port of call. And we never quite got to a GP or a pharmacist. Something always kind of just worked, and we never had to actually go with the children. So like many women, I really came into this because I had to make a health choice about somebody other than myself. And for many women, obviously, at times of hormonal change, things are often contraindicated. So mainstream medication is often contraindicated in pregnancy, and women struggle unless they come across something like homeopathy, maybe acupuncture that was, mentioned earlier. So that's my story. I'm going to hand over to Sam.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks, Caroline. It's always interesting to me listening to other people's story about how they came to homeopathy. I'm sorry, my dog is going to bounce up and down. Just bear with him. Always likes to jump in on my Zoom calls. 5 Funny enough, my story is not dissimilar to Caroline's. My first appointment to see a homeopath was for something I would say relatively minor, although it on an everyday basis didn't feel like that. I was struggling a lot with acid reflux, heartburn, and I was working a really stressful job at the time, basically not probably eating as well as I should, etc. And I went to see my GP, who wanted to prescribe antacids, which I started taking them, the acid blockers. I started taking them for a short period of time and realized very quickly that all they were doing was giving me constipation. And so I realized it wasn't actually solving the problem. So at that point, someone suggested, why don't you see a homeopath? And so I did. And at that point, the remedy they prescribed was a remedy called Nux vomica, and it solved the problem almost immediately. Whereas the GP's solution had been to offer me antacids, and I said, how long do I need to take them? And he said, for the rest of your life. And I just thought, that's insane. I'm not doing that. So that was my first kicking of the door down, that there was an alternative that actually worked. And then I went to live in Hong Kong, and there I was pregnant with my first child. And after she was born, I wanted, as Caroline did, to do everything in a very holistic way, wanted to breastfeed. And that was when my problem started, and I got mastitis. Now, this, for many women, is something that comes and goes, but for me, it wasn't. And I went to see a GP, and he gave me antibiotics. And I said, surely that's going to be a problem. I'm breastfeeding. And he assured me that it wasn't. And so I went against my own intuition, and I took the antibiotics because I was in a lot of pain. Subsequently, this went on and on. I went back several times, more antibiotics, absolutely no assistance. It didn't make any difference whatsoever. At which point I spoke to my mother, and she was living in Tenerife at the time. And she immediately hopped on a plane to Hong Kong, and she came over. And at that point, she told me that she had also had this problem, as had her mother. And the solution for my mother, as if when she went through the medical route, was eventually that they removed half of her breast tissue on one side. So she was left with half breast. And she then had to go through a large number of years stuffing tissue down her bra, and trying to make up for that cosmetic imbalance, let's just say. But the trauma was very deep, obviously. And so for me, that just told me that I was not going to continue to go down the medical route, and I was going to find an alternative. So I sought out a homeopath again, and he was also a Chinese doctor. And at that point, he prescribed me a remedy called Phytolacca. And it turned out that actually my issue was in the lymphatic system. And this is why Phytolacca for me was the remedy that worked. And he said, I wish you'd come sooner. And literally within 2 or 3 days of taking the remedy, it had gone. So that for me, then, because I was pregnant, well, by this stage, I'd had my first daughter. That was my moment where I thought, right, I am going to go and train. I am going to learn to be a homeopath. I'm taking not only my own medical decisions back to myself and my power back to myself, I also want to do so for my children. And that's my story. Here I am. So, Caroline, how do you want to take it from here?
I think Lucy should take it from the top of Help Ellen, just in case you want to go and walk.
I'll mute myself.
And just tell me if you want me to screen share your notes, or when you want me to.
Okay, cool. And you guys, thank you, Caroline, and both of you for those intros. It's funny, when we first all met properly, wasn't it, at Campfire, at Campout last year, just exchanging all our stories, and it's lovely to hear. And I had forgotten actually that when I was younger, I had a cough that was going on for weeks, and I think months actually. And it was just keeping everyone awake at night in the house, and no one really bothered. It seemed fine. Mum was very much like, well, she'll be all right. Doesn't really matter. You know, she's happy. She was a nurse. You don't get much love when you're a nurse's child. Homeopathy. So, and then one day I just stopped coughing in the middle of the night. And I think because they were so used to it, they thought I'd sort of stopped breathing. So Mum and Dad ran in and they were like, right, that's enough. Just going to have to go to the doctor. So much against Mum's wishes, we went off to see, I think she went to see her boss, her doctor, and explain the cough. And that was, he actually said to her, well, oh, that's right. I think had prescribed an inhaler. And Mum just said, no, she's not having an inhaler. It's a cough. She doesn't need an inhaler. And then it was the doctor who actually said, have you thought about seeing a homeopath? And that's when we went, and I had a remedy called Drosera. I didn't even go. Mum phoned her friend that was a sort of homeopath. I don't think she's ever studied. I don't think she practices. She just knows lots. She's taught herself. Maybe she did a couple of years course. And that's the beauty of homeopathy. And this was, I suppose it had been going on a while, but in a way it was acute. It was very simple. It was a 10-year-old with a cough that was worse when I lay down. And she gave me a remedy called Drosera, and the cough just stopped. That's it. That's the end of the story. I think I took one pill. So there we go. Anyway, so okay, I'll sort of move on to the bit I was going to cover, which from my office here at the top of Helvellyn with Maurice the dog is quite apt, because as people that know me know, I'm sort of the adventure homeopath. I'm always off travelling or hiking, doing things like that, playing sports, and homeopathy keeps me out of trouble for certain, keeps me out of hospital. And so I thought I'd focus on just a few remedies and a few stories of just how easy it is to use homeopathy yourselves, and sort of inspire you to really help yourself. And so I'm actually going to use the example of the last month. So I went off to Sri Lanka for maybe 6 to 12 months. I packed everything up, rented my house out. So now I don't have a house. Packed everything up. It's all in storage. And I bought a 50-litre bag, which is fairly small for a year. Got everything in it. And off I went to, first stop was Sri Lanka. I was going to be there 3 months and thought I'll just make it up from there. So actually, Caroline, if you could share my first slide, please. So I'm going to just talk very briefly, or I say briefly, probably, I don't know, if I got 10 minutes, is that all right, Caroline? Yes. And do a little photo, holiday photo share to show you just how many times I have needed my kit in the last month. So whilst Caroline's just loading that up, and you can, once everyone's seen my name, they can, you can move on to the second slide, that's fine. And before I start, I'll say that I'm always a bit blasé about travel insurance. And I was thinking, wow, we'll see. Like, I probably should. And a couple of people have said, have you got insurance? And when I go to Europe, I don't tend to bother. You get these flights that don't cost much, or I drive and I travel a lot, and I've got my homeopathy kit, and you've got your E111 form in Europe that gets you out of trouble. And I thought, oh, I suppose I'd better. And someone had said, look, you know, it doesn't matter how healthy you are and how sensible you are, you know, you can't control it if a bus drives into you or something like that, you know, if you really, really need insurance. So I decided it was probably a good idea. So I got my insurance. And on the way to the train, I was about 100 meters from the house, and I just needed to drop my car off. I'd actually been out to fill it with fuel and clean it inside and out. So that Rob back home would drive my car for me while I was away and start it so it didn't seize up. So I got about 100 meters from the house. Someone drove into me rather fast. That's now my car on the left, still sat there on the driveway. They've just agreed the payout yesterday. So yeah, just tootling along, someone drove into me quite fast and has completely written off the car. And he proceeded to turn right, drove into me and then turned right and just took out the whole car. And I didn't have really much time to do anything about it. So we just swapped details. He was in a lot of shock, poor guy. He was about 80 and on the way to the hospital for something. So I had to reassure him, and off I went, popped into the house, got my bag, got onto the train. And I was, I suppose, really quite shocked. And I didn't take a remedy. I was sort of aware that I have remedies that can really help that sort of thing. I didn't take a remedy because I suppose I'm used to a bit of a high octane lifestyle, and I was fine. But in that situation, there's 2 remedies in the kit which I could have used straight away, and that's arnica or aconite. So aconite is a sort of panic shock. Oh my God, what's just happened? Screaming, just over the top in a way, the way we often react in a panic. And arnica would be the opposite. Arnica would be someone that's just crawled out of a car crash, their arms hanging off. It's really, really bad. And they're just calm as anything. And they tell everyone, I'm fine. And, months later, you're saying, look, maybe you should see someone, and are you missing so-and-so, that maybe didn't survive the accident? I'm fine. And that sort of deep shock that's very slow and has gone in deep. But they can be used acutely or chronically. And that sort of first example is just an example of how we treat homeopathy. It's not right, you're having panic attack, here's this antidepressant. It's really, really individual. It depends entirely on what the sort of symptoms are. And there are loads of other ones as well. That's just 2 examples. So anyway, so maybe I wasn't supposed to go to Sri Lanka, because straight away something was trying to stop me get on that flight, but I made it. The next trip, the next photo is a lovely photo taken from one of the trains out there. Really, really beautiful. And that was in a lovely town called Kandy. And we got to Kandy, and there was a family there with a 2-3-year-old, and he was not adjusting to the heat. They were from Belgium, and he was not adjusting to the heat at all. And they said he had heat stroke, and they were really, really interested in homeopathy. They hadn't given him anything. They didn't really think it needed. They were just keeping him cool, keeping him inside as much as possible, giving him lots of water. And they'd been away already a couple of weeks, and they just said he just doesn't like us. He just hates us for bringing us here, and he just hates the heat. And he'd become really angry at them. So I said to them, look, you don't have to, but if you did want a remedy, just let me know. Anyway, so they came knocking on my door about 10 minutes later and said, okay, if you've got anything, that would be lovely. So I gave them belladonna, which is not only great for things related to heat and heat stroke, but also that sort of anger. It's also a great remedy for something like that. Again, you don't just prescribe necessarily on the symptoms. We take everything into consideration. But when you are just doing first aid, it is very simple. Belladonna is a great, great remedy for something like heat stroke. And actually, I do a bit of work also with a charity called Homeopathy at Welly level, who teach farmers how to use homeopathy themselves, so that they are more empowered and they can reduce their antibiotic use and so forth. I've just lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Yes, and so we often say to the farmers, if you know that there's a particularly bad heat stroke, a big sort of heat wave coming on, the good ones that we actually had, the real heat strokes that we had in the 80s, where it's just suddenly going to be very, very, very hot one day, and the animals aren't quite ready for it, then you can put belladonna in their water the day before, and they just seem to sail through it. Hang on 1 minute, I'm just going to ask this my friends nearby just to. Sorry about that. My friends are all just sat here, and I've just asked them to move a little bit because I could hear them all chatting. So yeah, it could be used for animals as well. So wonderful remedy. So the train journey was wonderful, quite uneventful. And then the next picture is outside a jungle hut that we stayed in. Really, really wonderful, absolute middle of nowhere, beautiful jungle. And one evening we got absolutely mobbed by leeches, and I don't have any pictures because it was such a panic. Actually, we had a lot of blood pouring out of our legs. We didn't really know what they were and if they were dangerous. We hadn't been in that situation before, and that was quite worrying. And one of the people I was in was really panicking, just completely not calm enough to try and remove them, just screaming and panicking. So actually in that situation, I took out an aconite, and I also had some rescue remedy as well, and it was amazing. Probably within the minute, he just completely calmed down, and that was really useful. And the owners of the accommodation came out and reassured us that actually it's quite lucky to get sucked on by leeches. They'll clean your blood, it's all fine, and there was absolutely nothing to worry about. And I think my own calmness in these events is from being a homeopath. Just nothing really that worries me. I tend to think, well, I've got my kit, I'm pretty invincible. I'll just move. I was going to slide onto the next one, but I can't do that. Can we go to the next slide, please, Carol? Okay, so I had to copy and paste these pictures just from the internet. I had quite a lot of pictures, like the left one, of bites, because we got really, really badly bitten for a few days. We didn't know what was biting us, and every night we were getting bitten. And the person I was with got a couple of 100 bites just on their sort of left shoulder alone, and it was really extreme. And didn't know what was biting us, but it didn't matter, because actually with homeopathy it really doesn't matter. I mean, obviously it matters, you want to stop getting bitten, but it doesn't matter what the bite is. You don't need to know, you just prescribe based on the symptoms. And actually we were both very different. So he was getting really angry with it, and his body temperature was really, really, really hot, and so I gave him a remedy for that. I was being bitten by the exact same thing, but I just felt like sort of attacked and like almost abused by these things. So I took a remedy called Staphysagria. He took a couple of remedies, belladonna and Lux vomica. They really, really helped as well. And eventually found out that they were fire ants. And we were sort of told, you're going to have to go to hospital. You probably need to go to hospital. You'll need to go and get aircon somewhere. You need hydrocortisone. And the people we were staying with weren't really willing to help us unless we followed their advice. So we actually had to go out, buy hydrocortisone, squeeze some down the toilet and put the tube in the bin so that they thought we'd been using it, which I know absolutely ridiculous, but we were in a very, very remote area. And they were adamant that we were doing everything we could before they'd sort of help us further. In the end, we just went away. We're very lucky. We went to somewhere with some aircon for a few days and just took remedies, and we were completely fine. And the bites just sort of cleared up. But it was very, very uncomfortable. At one point, sort of taking remedies at least once an hour just to get through the worst of pain. Another wonderful, wonderful remedy. I'm not expecting you all to learn from these remedies. It's more an example of just how wonderful it is. Another wonderful remedy is called Cantharis. It's made from the Spanish fly. And just a note on that, because I know I see in the comments already someone has asked if we can define what homeopathy is, and I think Caroline's going to come on to that. But I appreciate you letting me talk first while I've got signal, so that's wonderful. But the remedies are made from they're completely natural. They're made from all different substances. Caroline, are you sort of going to cover maybe what I'm about to say? Yes, she got a thumbs up, so I won't say any more on that. But this particular remedy, if you think about, if any of you know about the Spanish fly bite, it makes you really, really hot, and it's really, really annoying, and it's bothersome, and it can kind of drive you crazy with the heat and the itch. And so it was the remedy that I used the most then once those symptoms came on, because as you'll know, when you really start to think about your health, your symptoms change throughout an illness. You don't just need the cough medicine that doctor gives you. Actually, it can start when you start to really focus. Your sore throat will often start on the left or the right, or move from the left to the right, or maybe you get a little sensation in your ear first, and then an itch on the roof of your tongue, and then the sore throat, which then makes you feel a little bit tearful. You know, it's really looking at the minutiae and being able to prescribe individually. Cantharis, for that reason, is also really good for things like thrush and UTIs, where there's that really burning feeling and maybe an itch as well. So I was using Cantharis quite a lot actually in that situation. So the next picture is a sticky plaster on a poorly knee. So back further in the north of the island, out of the aircon, I had a tiniest graze on my foot, absolutely tiny, and it had just been where my flip-flop had rubbed on day one. There was nothing to it, didn't even need a plaster. But because it was slightly thinner skin, the flies started, this is all really gory stuff, but the flies started sitting on it. And I was warned that actually you do need to be a bit careful, and more flies were sort of sitting there, and it started going a little bit manky. So I had to obviously keep it clean. And again, the advice was to sort of go to the hospital or get some nasty cream or other, which I'm not adverse to. You know, I think the work that doctors do is absolutely amazing. And I'm not going to turn down hospital care or help, especially in a situation where I need it. But in this situation, it was fine. I just got some alcohol and kept it clean and put a cover on it. Usually leave a cut open, really, but it just wasn't an option. I had to keep it covered for a long time. And I was just using a couple of remedies. So calendula, And I used a bit of belladonna as well at one point, just for the initial infection, because again, it was red and hot. So I've probably used belladonna 3 times already for completely different things: sunstroke, an infected cut, and the ant bites. And it was amazing because a couple of the other people had some insect bites that had got infected, and they just weren't clearing up. And having spoken to one of them yesterday, they're still there. That's like 5 weeks later with infected cuts, and mine cleared up in about 3 days, and probably possibly sooner, but it was just so hard to keep them clean. And then the next one is a funny story. So next place I was in a sort of digital nomads co-working youth hostel. Hello, Marie. You okay? Yeah. That's the dog. Good boy. And there was a chap there, and we got talking, and I said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I run the world's biggest algorithm for data collection. I collect your data." So obviously I was thinking, wow, that sounds very wholesome. He was saying, if you ever see a study on the news where they've used statistics to create a policy, that's me that does that. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, great. Anyway, everyone needs a job, and you seem very happy, and you're very friendly. And a lot of people in these digital nomads now aren't very friendly. They don't really know how to talk to one another. So it's like, okay, that's fair enough. Nice. He said, what do you do? So I said, oh, I'm a homeopath. And he said, snake oil. That's all he said to me. So I said, oh, perfectly entitled to think that, perfectly entitled to your opinion, thinking that we'd move on. And then he said, do you know why I know it's snake oil? I said, oh, why is that? And he said, because I believe in the placebo effect. To which I said, well, I mean, you don't believe in the placebo effect. It's a proven thing. It's wonderful. I also believe in the placebo effect. And that was very much that. He was like, well, it's not right. I used to work for a pharmaceutical as well. I know what I'm talking about. So anyway, that was fine. And then that evening he came up to me and he said, do you wear contact lenses? And I said, oh, no, I'm afraid I don't. And he said, oh, I need some contact lens solution. Part of my contact is stuck in my eye, and I think it's just one little bit and it won't come out. I don't know how I'm ever going to get it out. I've asked everyone now. To which I said to him, you see, I've got a remedy for that, but unfortunately you'd have to take snake oil and succumb to the placebo effect, as he called it. But I've got a remedy if you want it. So he said, no, thank you. And he wore his glasses for the rest of the week with a really inflamed red eye. And I would have given him silica, which helps to just draw things out naturally. So if you've got something stuck inside a cut or a splinter, or something stuck in your eye, or even a sort of, it could be used where you've got a sort of catarrh that won't come out, you could soften it with one remedy and then help bring it out with another. So loads of uses, but he did not want my homeopathy. So next slide, and this is the last one now. That's lovely. So on the left is the local Sri Lankan food, which I ate before then getting on a bus. And the buses in Sri Lanka, they have disco lights. It's dark by about 6:30, 7 every night, being on the tropics. Got on this bus, and the buses drive at the fastest you can possibly imagine. And they're very, very full. And they had disco lights and loud music playing. And I had just eaten this lovely Sri Lankan meal on the left. And it did not go down too well, and it was actually the start of, I'm sure the bus journey had very little to do with it, but I was very, very sick, and I don't think the bus had anything to do with it, but I unfortunately then had a week of Delhi belly, where I was in bed, not feeling my best, and again just use remedies to get through it, and I know when you're in these parts of the world you might not take anything, or you might go to the pharmacy and just get some diorolite or something to support your immune system. But I don't know how bad it would have been. I was very much on my own. I had a couple of other people in the same hostel that I was talking to, but and just use remedies to get me through it. And then the girl on the right, she was on the same bus, and that's her getting off the bus and hugging her rucksack because she felt so travel sick. And she had I couldn't even get my kit out on that journey. I mean, despite feeling sick myself, I couldn't take my eyes off the horizon. It was pretty awful. We got chatting afterwards, and she said that it's a real problem for her. She's struggling to go anywhere really in the country because she's so travel sick. So obviously I gave her a remedy for that. And we did a few more trips together, and she was much better on the journeys after that, as a result. I think that's my last slide. I've got a couple of notes written down here, so I'm just going to check to see that I've covered what I wanted to talk about. So I'm just going to look down now. Bear with me. Before, oh, am I still there? Yeah, I was also taking some remedies the first few days when we first got there, because I tend to get bitten often by sort of mozzies. I seem to attract them. So I was taking a couple of remedies, what we call prophylactically as well. And that's where you can sort of take the remedies in advance. And that's a whole other area of homeopathy. But I was taking a couple of remedies just for that reason. And obviously fire ants, they were, I think, attacking us because I think they might have been in the mattress. So any sort of mosquito prevention isn't really going to work there. Maybe they bit us less than they would, who knows. But and Maurice, I don't know where Maurice's dog's gone. He's wandering around somewhere. But I give him a remedy called Leadum. I give it to him for 5 days, just in his water at the beginning of tick season. And I usually wait till he's got his first tick, and then I pull it out and I give him Leadum for 5 days, and that's fine. He's fine for a couple of months. A few months later, he may get another one, and then I just repeat that. But he never gets. That's it. After that, I usually wait. Like I say, wait for the first one, just because it's then tick season. But that's it. He has that a couple of times a year. He never gets ticks. He never gets fleas. Whilst I was away, I co-parent him with my ex-partner. Whilst I was away, he got injured on his leg, and it was very bad. And Rob said every time he moved, he was crying and wincing. And he had remedies as well. Rob knows what to do. He's got a remedy kit at home. We have these little kits that you can buy from pharmacies, and that's the main thing I think that we probably want to get across. Professionally trained, and when the sort of shit hits the fan, so to speak, and you really need something sorting out, you can come and see us. But actually, acutely, you can be in control of your health at home, and you don't need to rely on having to get to the pharmacy at midnight or needing to go to a doctor when you can't, and so forth. So yeah, Maurice was absolutely fine, just on remedies, and also that it just reduces our panic. When you've got a dog, he was crying. When you've got an animal that's crying, you think, oh my God, it's going to be expensive going to the vet. But it was only when he went to put some weight on it, and as soon as he was up, he was absolutely fine, which again helps inform which remedy it was he needed. Some people, they get up from an injury, and the more they walk, the more it hurts. You think, no, this is terrible. And for others, get up and you think, oh, once I'm up, I'm fine. And that would be a remedy called Rust Tox, for example. I mean, there are so many. And we would absolutely have taken him to the vet if it had been any worse, but he was absolutely fine. Now he's around, running around. And then just 2 last things I've got on my, am I right for time? Just 1 more minute, Caroline? Yeah, 1 more minute. I've got the thumbs up for 1 more minute. So on my last night, if Sri Lanka hadn't given me enough reasons to leave, and I didn't leave because of a bit of sickness and things like that. There are various reasons, but actually I was really, really, really not enjoying the humidity. It's monsoon season out there, and I'm just going to reassess my travels and keep traveling. But that sort of humidity is not. I don't thrive in that. And again, we have remedies that we can help work out what remedy you need based on what sort of weathers you thrive in. It's all very, 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 very wonderful. Anyway, the last night I managed to, I think probably trap a nerve in my neck or something, and I was in absolute agony, and I can't really explain how bad it was, but I was trying a few remedies through the night. I was in a shared dorm room. At one point, I just lay with my arm in the air like this for 45 minutes in a still position, which got me about 45 minutes of lying awake, not in pain. It was absolute agony, and I was trying some remedies. Tried 2 or 3, and eventually I actually took a remedy called Traumeal, which is a combination of sort of injury remedies. And I tell you what, I see people get better every day. It's wonderful, homeopathy, but this was almost like a rebaptism. I was in so much pain, and then the pain went, and it went from a sort of 9 out of 10 to about a 6 out of 10, which when you're abroad and you're thinking, I have to get on a flight tomorrow across the world, and they're not even going to let me on, or I'm going to pass out from the pain and they'll send me to a hospital and God knows what. I mean, it was agony, and I was able to just sit there, couldn't really sleep, but I was able to sit there not in pain. And even for me, that was like, God, this stuff, what is this? Anyway, I had 14 of those tablets left, and I had about 28 hours of travel, and I was like, okay, I can just about do this. I'm going to cope. I've got 14 tablets, homeopathic tablets. And the next day, a wonderful traditional medicine person came. It wasn't Ayurvedic. He was Sri Lankan traditional, was what he called himself. And he did some massage work and unblocking, and it was amazing. And at the end of the consult, he said to me, "Do you have anything for a bad knee?" To me. And I said to him, well, you know, you're a traditional therapist in massage. Why would you need something for a bad knee? And he'd nearly lost his knee earlier that year. They were going to amputate, but instead they kept it on. He was in a metal and pins in his leg. And he said that the pain should go eventually, but it's been about 10 months already, and it's just not settled, and he's in pain a lot of the time. So I now didn't need my 14 tablets because he helped me. So I kept back 2 just in case. And I gave him the tablets and I said, here you go, and I'll send you some more from the UK. And I got a text from him yesterday to say that the pain's gone. He's never been out of pain for 10 months and the pain has gone. Hopefully that remedy will sort of help to start the repair work on his knee. It may be that he needs to take them now and again when he flares up, but he's now out of pain thanks to homeopathy. So Maurice is now sat next to me. I'm going to show you. He's very, very happy, wagging his tail. There you go. Say hello to everyone. There we go. Such a dog owner. Love our dogs. I'm gonna sign off from there. I'll rejoin again. I think we'll have some question and answers at the end. So I think it's probably best. What do you think if I rejoin for questions?
That sounds great, Lucy. Thank you. That sounds fabulous. So maybe
maybe
30 minutes?
I'll go on mute and turn. Yeah, I'm going to go on mute and turn my camera off, but I'll be here.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
And do
Bye
put
now.
questions in the chat box, by the way, as we go, because each of us are going to talk from a slightly different space, I guess. Because one of the things about homeopathy is we look at the individual and the journey, you know, your timeline, how you arrived at the place you are. So just pop that in. Oh, Poppy, going to miss you, but need to catch up. I'm going to hand over to you, Sam, if that's all right. Yeah.
Yeah,
cool. And I'll jump back in with, you know, so I'll tell you what's really interesting always about working with this. And I know that it was Zelda who said she was creating and crafting some talks and workshops and stuff. And, you know, when you're in that space, and I'm sure you're the same, Pete, with the songs, you know, in that creative space and you're working with something beautifully energetic, it's like things drop in. So already things that I'm going to mention later touch into what Lucy's talked about, and I know the same is going to happen with Sam, and we did not consult on what we were actually going to talk about other than sketching it out. So over to you, Sam. And yeah, I love that serendipity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, thank you very much. Oh my goodness, my dog's just popped up again. Thank you for that, Lucy. It was really very, very practical, very useful information, which I think is always very useful to have. I know when I go traveling, I am exactly the same now, actually, that I am so grateful that I have my remedy kit and that I have those tools available for me and my family or whoever I'm traveling with. So I'm going to start my little slot now without further ado, and I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to try and get this so that this goes on to the
do it from the slideshow, Sam. If you scroll along the top there and go to slideshow, yeah, and it will just say from wherever you want to show it from. Yeah, cool.
Okay, so play from start. Here we go. Right. Okay. So, as Caroline said, we all are going to start this from a slightly different space. And for me, what I wanted to do was to just do a little bit more in terms of what homeopathy is, because Caroline's going to cover that specifically, I'm going to cover more in terms of why homeopathy works, okay? And from this point, basically what we're talking about is energy, essentially, right? So within my practice, yes, I am a homeopath. I take a little bit more of an integrative medicine approach. So for me, I focus very much on the microbiome. I'm not going to talk about these things today, but they are, from a holistic point of view, very, very relevant. And so I do tend to focus a lot on restoring the balance into the microbiome. But really what I want to focus on within my section here is energy and frequency. And whilst that might seem momentarily as though what's that got to do with homeopathy, it actually has everything to do with homeopathy, because homeopathy essentially is an energetic medicine. It's taking the frequency and the energy of a material substance and matching it in a way that is absorbable and usable by our energy. And so the reason there are therefore different potencies for each of the remedies is so that the homeopath, when they're prescribing, not only are they looking at what is the remedy, so some of the examples that Lucy used, you know, you can go for belladonna, but what potency, what frequency is basically what that means. So are you looking to get it into more of a material dose level, or are you seeing that there is a higher frequency that's needed either for that individual, or tuning into that person's energy and realizing that they may be resonating and vibrating on a higher vibration, i.e. their energy is moving faster. And so therefore the remedy that they require will need to be of a higher potency for it to match the individual and for them to get the healing that they need. And this book in particular, if you haven't read it, I thoroughly recommend it. Barbara Wren, she talks about, as I'm sure most of the people who are on here are aware, you know, we are moving into a hugely different period of time in our evolution. And as a result, our bodies are starting to hold more light. And so the Cellular Awakening book is a really, really lovely book that kind of talks about a little bit more about how that's kind of impacting on us, but it's particularly on a cellular level. So one of the things that I also do within my practice works basically with sound, because we are, if you want to take everything back to the real core and the beginning, everything started with sound. And from that, you get a frequency and a vibration. So one of the things that I also use within my work is sound. And if you, I've actually put the link to this particular video on the bottom there if anyone's interested to watch it, but you can see from the samples above, before the gong bath, if you actually look at the outer layer of the cell membrane there, the red blood cell, this is what she's talking about in the Cellular Awakening, that this is what a lot of our red blood cells look like now. The cell membrane is very, very compromised for all sorts of reasons, one being not enough light, another being a lot of toxicity in the body, and so on. So, but what is fascinating to me is that these two blood samples were literally taken 5 minutes apart from each other. And the only thing that had changed that cellular structure was a gong bath. So this shows the power of the frequency. And this shows, therefore, one of the reasons why homeopathy is so powerful as a medicine. And one of the things that homeopaths will do is work very much with not just the physical body, but recognizing that we have very many different aspects of self, which can be summarized as our physical body, our emotional body, our mental body, and if you like, your aura or your spiritual body, which is your energy. And it is known that water holds memory. And so within the remedies, Sometimes you can be given them as pills, but sometimes you can be given them in water. And so within that water, you have not only the cellular memory of the actual material that's being used, but also you have within that this beautiful synergistic dance, if you like, or integration of the intention of what the person is asking for from the homeopath, and the homeopath is putting into that remedy as their intention for the cure, which is in itself remarkably powerful. So we all know that we have the physical body. We all know what we really need here. It's not rocket science, any of this. But it's also important to recognize our mental body. This is energy, essentially, that is coming through. And one of the big organs that we don't tend to really realize is connected to the mental body is the spleen. And the spleen, from the Chinese medicine point of view, is all about our prana, our qi. Its energy is actually upright. It's going upward. So it is basically also our connection with source. So when we're channeling information from source, that information that drops in is very much coming through the spleen, and the spleen will hold that information, and then depending on how open our channels are within our body, we can then process it through, because another role of the spleen is to transform and transport the information around the body. Within this, we also have to consider the emotional layer. Now, the emotions essentially are our bridge between our physical and our spiritual. And they are in themselves an energy. And so when you go into your training as a homeopath, what you're going to find in the materia medica for each of the remedies is that actually in the mind and the emotional section of each remedy is probably a lot bigger. I'm not going to say a percentage, but certainly a lot bigger percentage in terms of what the remedies are actually resolving. Because really, it's been said, I mean, it's a guess, I guess, but 80% of our physical ailments actually start from an emotional causation. So whilst Lucy's talking about the first aid and the acutes, and Caroline's going to go into more remedies in her part of the presentation, if you've got something that doesn't seem to resolve itself from those sort of acute remedies, this is where you're going to probably need to connect with a homeopath to help you work out where that is being stored and where it needs to be released. And we also have the light body, which we've just talked about a little bit, so I'm not going to go into that in too much more detail, but this again is about energy, wavelength, frequency. So I'm not going to go too much into the homeopathic section here, other than what we've just talked about. Really, it works on the principle of like cures like. And so the whole point of that essentially is to bring the body back into its natural balance so that it can heal itself. This, I thought, was just a nice slide to show how we are basically made up of water. And so with water and the body, this is where it's a really lovely example of Dr. Emoto, who did an awful lot of work around what is the energy of thoughts, your words, the frequency. All of these things have their own frequency. And in this particular example, I just wanted to show this is the power of where we think we don't have the power. This is a beautiful illustration of how actually, even with something where we are living in a very toxic world, there are solutions simply through our own thoughts, words, intentions, frequency. Because you will see from this particular photograph the difference between the ice crystal frozen after simply just using those tools. So in terms of homeopathy, therefore, I'm not going to go again into these in detail because I know Caroline is going to do that. But I just wanted to show from a mind and emotions point of view, just a very quick quick look see at a couple of remedies, because if somebody presents, for example, with a cold, they've got some kind of let's just stick with a cold, keep it simple. Depending on what your cold is like, some people might have they might feel very chesty, they might feel very congested, they may have very blocked sinuses, or they may have a cold where everything is streaming. You've got running eyes, runny nose, etc. So those automatically, as a homeopath, would indicate two different remedies. In this particular instance, the congested element could be the pulsatilla. It's one of the options that we could use. Or we could look at Natmur, which is the one that basically is more about sneezing, could be hay fever, allergies, etc. But the reason for referencing these two is to kind of look at the mental emotional. So I've done it very briefly, but in this example, you'd be looking at, with pulsatilla, you've got someone who is what they call, it's the weathercock remedy. So it can move very quickly from one thing to another. The moods are very, very changeable. Hence, it happens to be also quite well indicated for women who are feeling very emotional around the time of their menopause, or even for their menstrual cycle. So you would compare that, for example, with, when we go back to the Natmur example, in this example, Natmur is very inward. They're holding everything in. So they're not really talking about what their emotions are. And even when you ask them, their answer will be, oh, well, I think, blah, 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 blah. And as a homeopath, it's really, really important to notice those subtle nuances of what someone's telling you. So when you ask them how they're feeling, some people can say, oh, I feel blah, 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 blah. But if the answer comes through as I think, then automatically you can see that that person is struggling to connect with that emotional intelligence. And so that the Natmur is a superb remedy for unlocking that. And this is just to kind of, say again about how emotion is energy. It gets stuck in our emotional field. It therefore starts to block our meridians. Now, quite often as homeopaths, we will use, I certainly do, I know Caroline does, I'm not so sure, I don't know Lucy so well. We use we cross-reference with the Chinese medicine model. And one of the things that I like about the Chinese medicine model is that it has been put together purely as through observation. And it works very much, these meridians really, they use more in alignment with acupuncture. But it's working on the basis that we are, again, we're energy. We have all these acupressure points within the body. They form what's also known as the endocannabinoid system. But when we don't process emotions and we get stuck within our thought process, then very often it will get stuck in these meridians here. Because what happens is the spleen, which is where the thoughts are supposed to move forward into an emotion and then out of the body, or the thoughts are supposed to move into some kind of creation and therefore it goes outward. If it doesn't move in that natural way, because there's some kind of emotional block, what will start to happen is this meridian does in fact overlap and cross over with the stomach meridian. Then what starts to happen is you start to get those thought forms start to fester, and it becomes what we call anxiety or worry. And if they're continued to allow to fester, then the stomach will start to express symptoms of some description, which will be different for the individual. But this is a good example on, oh, I've got stomachache. Why have you got stomachache? Oh, it's something you've eaten. Well, it could be, of course. It could be that you've got some kind of food poisoning. That's where you use the acutes. But if it's chronic, then you need to start to look and investigate a little bit further. What is it that the stomach is trying to tell you? What is stuck there? And it is usually some kind of emotional energy. And everything here you can see is divided into 12. During the 24 hours, so it's like a 12-hour clock, but it's 24 hours. So you'll see that.
Yeah, no, it's been great.
Sorry? Oh, so then in each of these sections, what it's showing you is that within each of these 2 hours intervals, the energy within our body is more focused in this particular meridian. So likewise, therefore, if we're asking questions as a homeopath, what time of the day do your symptoms seem to be worse? And if somebody says, oh, well, do you know what? I often wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Then you've got to start then looking at between 3 and 5 a.m. is the lung meridian. And with each of these major organs in Chinese medicine is an emotion that tends to be held there. So again, if you have someone who's presenting with a cough or a cold that has not been able to be cured with your typical acute remedies and taking rest and fresh air and good food and all of the things that you might want to do to restore your health, and allow the body to heal itself. If that is not sufficient and the cough doesn't clear, we're looking at a number of different things. It's very, very related to spleen energy, by the way, but I don't have enough time to go into that today. But from an emotional aspect, the emotion that tends to get held in the lungs is grief. And so more often than not, you then start to ask, well, what happened at the time? What was going on for you at the time you started to get these symptoms? And even in the preceding year, 2 years, whatever, then suddenly you find that they say, oh, yeah, my mother died. And I wasn't able to process the grief because I was looking after my children, my family, I was too busy with my job, etc., etc. And so therefore, as a homeopath, what you then do is you start to look for the grief remedy, which actually so happens to be the napmio that I talked about earlier, where everything's very held in. And so you can see that what actually happens is you start to put the pieces of a puzzle together. And as a homeopath, what we do is we tend to, that's our job with we're the detective, it's to put all those little pieces of the puzzle together. And so often for me, when people come, because we do give them a long consultation, it allows everything to kind of come up and out. And actually quite often, even before they've even left, they'll say, I actually already feel so much better. Because what you've done is you've helped them to bring the cognitive process in line with the emotional process and connecting it with the physical body. So you are connecting all of those processes cognitively for them, even within that space that you've shared with that particular individual, the healing has already begun. So I'm going to just finish off by just referencing, if you are interested to kind of learn a little bit more about the frequencies and how that there are, what I think is one of the most exciting things about us heading into the age of Aquarius is all about technology. And of course, with everything, there's the yin and the yang, there's the shadow and the light, so it's going to be an interesting period of time to navigate. But there are technologies. I'm actually working with one already, a light wave technology, which I am very, very excited about in terms of its potential for helping the cells to come back to their natural resonance, to bring them into the frequency with which they can heal. And that this is not really new information. I mean, Dr. Reif was talking about this, over 100 years ago, and he was able to establish how to basically bring the body back up, the cells back up to the right frequency, so that basically they stopped expressing illness, which essentially is because they are not able to get to that right frequency where they can heal themselves. And if no one has seen these podcasts, I think probably most people have. This bottom one here, I think as well, 8.6 million views to date. If you want to really start to explore this area, then go and listen to what he has to say. It will turn everything that you ever thought that you knew completely on its head. However, I feel that if we are going to really move into the age of Aquarius, we have to be open to accepting that there is so much that we didn't know, or there's so much that we thought we knew, but we need to turn it around and be very open-minded to receiving different information, different frequencies, different perspectives. And everything is a matter of perspective. Okay, so I'm talking from my perspective today. Lucy's talking from hers, Caroline's talking from hers. And some of it will resonate with some of it won't. And that's all okay. You will pick up what you need or don't need from this session. So that really is just for me. I think that was it. Yeah. And really, yeah, I just wanted to finish my section by basically saying, really, we are one and the same as the earth. And if we really want to find our true healing, we need to get back to connecting with the earth, which I know is very, very aligned probably with everybody that is on this call today. So that's me. I'm going to pass back over to Caroline.
Thanks, Sam. That was great. And I loved so much of that. I want to go back and listen to this and read again, you know, because it's like already, because there's so many things that you said that it's like, and I want to know about, just text you about something. Because, you know, we as homeopaths, as Sam said, we're detectives and we have a very inquiring mind. I would say that one needs to be curious. And somebody mentioned the word skeptical, or being a skeptic, whatever that is. I highly recommend that you are skeptical if you want to train as a homeopath, because you need to be asking questions about everything that you've ever learned, you know, Newtonian science principles, and that Terence Howard is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, a couple of things that I picked up on. So one of the things he talks about is the periodic table. And the periodic table, as you know, is the block of squares with letters in it that represent elements, and that is not how the world feels. And he talks about spirals and how elements relate to each other in a completely different way. And as soon as I tuned into that, I was like, wow, this is why a remedy like Natrium muriaticum or Nat Mur that Sam talked about is such a good remedy for people who don't react well in a chlorinated swimming pool. Because when the chlorine element unfolds or rolls into the next level, it rolls into the natrium level. Anyway, that's really interesting. And it also completely shows why a remedy called Arsenicum album is the remedy, or was the remedy, for the original COVID. And I kind of followed that throughout, and you know, like many, wasn't able to really speak without being silenced. So yeah, let's go to the beginning of my slideshow, and I'll just get it to the beginning. And oops, let's just share on screen. And let me find mine, and we'll go from the beginning. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to pick up on some of the things that both Lucy and Sam talked about. So hopefully you can see my screen. And I put in homeopathy at home and on your travels, because just like Sam and Lucy, I have had a little homeopathy kit with lots of individual remedies in it for a long time. It's just a bit about my background and where to find me. and you can come back to this if you want to, if you're, on Instagram. And I do have a couple of videos on YouTube, actually. What I encourage you to do, if you're curious and you want to delve into homeopathy and how it is for you, is to make sure that you have a notebook and that you just jot down the remedies that you start to use, because they are very readily available and very easy to access. And I'm going to show you that in the next 15 to 20 minutes, where to get them and some pointers. But take notes and go and just note, these are my symptoms, this was the remedy I took, because homeopathy is actually very efficient. I have been prescribing what some might call snake oil. I don't mind it being called snake oil, actually, and I'll explain why maybe as we go along, for a quarter of a century. And I'm considering going back to my more creative roots. I was came from art school, as I said earlier. So what is homeopathy? As Sam said, it's an energy medicine. We use material substance in the original preparation, and then they're diluted many times. The higher the dilution, so it's serially diluted. We take one element, we dilute it, we take a little bit of that, we dilute it again, we take a little bit of that, we dilute it again. And the higher the dilution, the deeper the action. And that was difficult for me with my logical mind, coming from my, physical chemical parents, physicists, and a very logical mind. Gemini with Virgo rising, things need to fit together. And it was like, oh, this is outside of my understanding, but my felt experience coming from the head to the heart and the body was, this is working for me. So concept like that took me a while to get my head around. My body was telling me. So some say that the memory of the original substance is there. Some say that the information is there. This is now being scientifically proven. So I sometimes say to people, think of a book with blank pages, and you're already forming questions about that book. You're already wanting to open the book, perhaps smell the pages. I was in a bookshop the other day smelling new books, and I was like, wow, yeah, this draws me into wanting to buy a new book and see what's on the inside. So it was an art gallery yesterday and I bought a book, knowing that I shouldn't really, because I've got a ton I haven't read yet, but hey, when I'm older. So think of that book with blank pages and you're already forming questions about it and writing a story in your head about what might be inside. Now, if I call it the Bible, or I call it the Quran, or I call it the Torah or the Upanishads, you're immediately associating information with that object. Knowledge can be powerful and memory is with us forever. So these are things that we are toying with, playing with. Sam's alluded to in her approach of talking about it as an energy medicine. Energy and information channeled into, here we've got pictures of dropper bottles and pilules. So as Sam has said, we can make our homeopathic remedies as pilules, granules. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. As we go further along, we can make them in different ways and we take them into our bodies. I think that's an important thing to say. We can use them topically. More normally, we would be taking a remedy orally. And I'll talk a little bit about pace of that and dosage. But first of all, what we make our remedies from, and I think it's a little bit like that game, 20 questions, is animal, plant, mineral substances that are diluted many times. And we also use imponderables. Those are things that you're like, how the hell did that become a remedy? And I'll talk about a few of those. We also make remedies from, and this is going to sound weird if you don't, this concept, we make them from body parts and we make remedies from disease matter. So I'm going to explain that bit. Most of our remedies have Latin names and we abbreviate them. So throughout this, I've used the common abbreviations and I've written them in bold. So here are some examples. And we have thousands and thousands of remedies. So the ones that you get in your homeopathic kits, you might have 18 of them or 36 of them or 42, depending on where you buy them. And I appreciate people are listening in from all over the world, so I'm going to give you a little signpost around that. But those remedies that are in your homeopathic kits are the most commonly used remedies, and we call them our polycrest remedies. Polycrest literally in Latin means many-headed. That means that these remedies have many symptoms and can be used for many different things. So when Sam was talking about Natmur as an emotional remedy for grief, we also use it as a fever remedy. We also use it as a remedy for the thyroid, where we have this inner contained heat that isn't being expressed. So what we see on the physical level, we see on the mental emotional level. So sepia, the cuttlefish, it's actually a remedy made from the ink of the cuttlefish rather than the actual creature. Lucy talked about Drosera rotundiflora. That is the sundew, and that is a remedy for a cough. And I just wanted to mention that because that was a remedy that my son later had. So I mentioned he had a cough when he was 4 months old, and he had the fourth remedy down there, calcarb, Calcarea carbonica. He had that as a baby for his coughs. It was a brilliant remedy for him, for his cough. It was a chesty little cough, so it was a little mucus in the cough. And when he was about 10, I'm jumping forward a bit, he went ice skating and his feet got really chilled, and then he got a cold. Well, one of the indications for prescribing calcarb is for somebody who gets a cold after their feet have got chilled. So it was a remedy that he needed as a baby, and he needed it again later for a physical causation. Well, somewhere between those two times, when he was around 15 months old, I think, I didn't vaccinate him. I read all the books. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not putting that in my baby. I'm going to make a different choice. Homeopathy was their choice, as I said. And somewhere in there, he got whooping cough. Now, I re-met my dad. So I hadn't seen my dad since I was 8. I re-met my dad when I was 28, when I had Tom. And I began to, through homeopathy, my remedy was sepia, so I put it in there. So he had calcarb for his cough, would go back for the homeopath for subsequent coughs. And she said to me one day, I think you need to come and see me, because I was experiencing I was a bit disorientated, a bit disconnected, and I didn't really know what was going on. In fact, my blood sugar was low because I'd gone back to my pre-pregnancy weight, and I was dipping below that weight. I was breastfeeding him. I was putting a lot of me into baby without putting enough nutrition into myself. My blood sugar was disordered, and I had a remedy called sepia, and it reached right back to a much earlier time in my life. She said, when did you feel like this before? I was like, when I was 8. And she was like, what happened when you're 8? I was like, my parents split up. I had a new dad, didn't really know what was going on. And I'm sharing that because this is such a common story. So many people experience something happening when they're 8, when they're moving from the domain of the mother into the domain of the father being an important influence in their lives. And another stage in people's timelines when things often happen is in their teens, 13, 14. And I bet this is resonant for an awful lot of you here, particularly if you're struggling with darkness. So I'm saying this because this is how it is. So he had whooping cough, and it wasn't until I met my dad, who'd had whooping cough twice, and there's a lot of tuberculosis in the family, that I understood that the lungs were really big in our family. And you heard Sam talk there about the lungs and the time of day when the lungs might wake up and say to us, hey, we need some attention. And I just let Jeff back into the room. Jeff's, I think, shiatsu. So that kind of like knowing about the meridians of the body, the references to Chinese medicine we often use. So the lungs were awake in our family. He had whooping cough. He had the remedy Drosera rotundifolia, and that really helped him cough up the mucus. And then I went to a homeopath once we were actually away at the time, went back to a homeopath when we were back in London. Said, look, he's had this terrible cough, you know, and she gave him this remedy at the bottom here, tuberculinum cock, which is made from the tuberculum mass, highly diluted. And he never had a cough again. I never heard him cough again until he was about 26, and 26 years, not months. So that can be the power of digging into the family history, going back, figuring out what kind of where we went wrong, where the energy changed and shifted. And homeopathy is an amazing way to fix that. So Jeff said he'd broken his leg, I think, and asked about remedies when Lucy talked about someone hurting themselves. And yeah, the guy broke his leg, I think. And so the first port of call when we've got a broken leg might be a remedy like arnica that we mentioned. If the bone isn't knitting, we might use a remedy like symphytum, whose country name is knit bone or bone set. Some know it as comfrey. More commonly, we call it comfrey. So symphytum is the Latin name. And I've written the names by which the homeopaths call them in bold, but always in what we call our materia medica, we have the English or the common name. So lachesis, I've mentioned, is made from the venom of a snake. Now, if you're vegan, you don't like to harm animals, you might be like, oh my God, these homeopaths are killing animals. It's like, the venom doesn't necessarily kill the snake, although I'm not entirely sure about how you'd get the venom from the snake without that, but we'd have to delve back into our books. But the venom of one snake has made all the lachesis in the world because we use these high dilutions. So I'm going to come back to that a bit later. But that's pretty powerful, that all those people with left-sided sore throats, all those women with left-sided ovarian problems, that remedy has come from one snake. When you think about the impact of big pharma and how it is raping the earth, homeopathy is freaking amazing. So yes, we do make remedies from crazy things like rainbow, and we do perhaps use a body part like pituitary anterior. Again, small part of tissue is used to make all the remedies because of this serial dilution. So it's it doesn't hurt the planet. It doesn't hurt your pocket in itself once you know a bit about homeopathy. So we talk about the doctrine of signatures, and we talk about, as the herbalists do, what is that plant or element telling you? So sepia, the sepia woman particularly, it's often given to women, although it is given to men. I give it to men who are always picking fault with things. Nothing pleases them. Fault finding. Sepia is one of the big remedies for fault finding. You give, yeah, anyway, let's not, you could talk about cases all day. But sepia loves to move like the cuttlefish moves in the water. If you've ever dived and you've seen cuttlefish, they move so elegantly, beautifully in water. Sepia loves to run, dance, and she feels better for those actions. Silica, which was the remedy, if you remember that, Lucy was going to give to the guy who had a little bit of stuff stuck in his eye, and she was going to give that remedy because it has an expulsive action in the physical way. It's also the remedy that I give to people who have a lot of information in a small space, like the silicon chip. And what was that guy involved in? Statistics. That guy is obsessed with the minutiae, small amounts of information. So not only does that guy need silica to get the bit out of his eye, and then perhaps he'll see more clearly about all sorts of things, he, to my mind, could do with silica because of his mind, because he can collect data, store it, order it, and he loves that. That is silica on toast. So the lachesis person, I mentioned that remedy, is somebody that for the homeopath or even the friend, you're like, that person is talking at you volubly. They're really throwing information at you, and you're like, oh my God, I'm kind of backing away from you because they might scare you a bit. They're like the snake. You're a little wary of them, especially if they're angry, especially if they're spitting at you. So we see these actions in our remedies. And I mentioned the remedy rainbow because what do we feel when we see the rainbow? We feel magic. you know, and it's a wonderful magical remedy. Sam mentioned Positilla, the windflower. It grows in groups and it sways with the wind. So as a remedy, as a person, they're often changeable. The plant remedies often look to other people for acknowledgement. So who can have homeopathy? Everybody from children to elderly. Our pets can have homeopathy. And I just alluded to a few things. Why use homeopathy? In itself, it's a low-cost solution. It's low environmental impact. It's lightweight and portable. You know, you've got this thing that virtually fits in the jeans back pocket. You can walk anywhere in the world with. It can be used alongside or instead of medication. So for many people, they're like, oh, it's an either or. It's like, no, we can help you wean off a drug. Somebody earlier mentioned that they were trying to give up smoking. And Lucy talked about a remedy called Nux vomica. We might use Nux vomica to help somebody wean off cigarettes or alcohol or other types of medication or drugs. Homeopathy can help canalize nutrients. That means if you're looking at the nutrient value of your food, homeopathy can help target that food to where it's needed. So say you were trying to strengthen your bones. It can help just target the nutrition anyway, generally, help you draw up nutrients more effectively. And it's safe. You know, we have this thing, if you take the wrong remedy, it just doesn't really do much for you. It's efficacious, it means it works. And for any skeptics, there are thousands and thousands of clinical evidence. Do not believe everything you read in the paper. I've just literally just looked at a post from Dr. Louise Newson about synthetic estrogen and how there is, according to her, no link with breast cancer. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to work with that one because there's lots of studies that show that there are. So somewhere in the middle is some truth. Let's have a look at what's in our kit. I just wanted to say, so I've said there's 18 remedy kits, 36 remedy kits, 42 remedy kits. These can be posted out all over the world. And you notice there that there are different strengths or different numbers rather after the remedies there. So you'll notice, let me just flip the screen up just 1 minute. I'm just going to pin my image for a moment. There we go. Yes, so I prefer, if I really, it's not much more to pay for 42 remedies from Ainsworth's than it is for the 36 remedy from Helios. And they come with a little booklet, and there's loads and loads of short courses online to, I do short courses, I'm sure Lucy and Sam do as well, and certainly would be open to a chat and learning space. So most homeopaths love to share information. So, you know, going back to that very early homeopath that I saw, homeopaths have really changed in the last, 35 years, and there is much more available education. So go out and get it if this piques your interest. So as I've said, we can provide remedies in pills, tablets, liquids, granules. Soft tablets for babies and animals are a good choice, although they do cost a bit more these days. And the lowest cost ones are the sucrose granules that you have in your first aid kit. A couple of the softer ones usually have a bit of lactose in, very small amount because they're tiny, remedies are tiny. And we can actually get non-sugar pilules made on xylitol. We can give remedies to babies and pets. You might just want to crush them between, a couple of teaspoons, clean teaspoons, or you can dissolve a pilule in cooled boiled water and give a sip as the dose. So you're thinking, how can I give that to somebody? And if somebody was in an accident, and was not conscious, and you wanted to give them arnica, you could have it as drops and just put it on a pulse point. So we absorb it as needed. But generally speaking, we give remedies orally. I always say to people to store your remedies in a cool place, away from strong smells. Don't keep them next to your pure essential oils. And remedies last for many, many years. So you'll see that on your kit and your bottles. And those little remedy bottles that you have in your first aid kit, in that very first picture, you can get those topped up, you can get them replaced. So it drives me nuts when I say to somebody, if you've got any apnea in your house, said it to my neighbour recently who's got terrible eczema on his hands. I mean, his hands have blown up with the most terrible eczema since he's had 2 or 3 AstraZeneca jabs. I can say that here. Can't normally talk to really, oh, I don't know. Anyway, so I said, have you got any apnea? They said, oh no, we've run out. So I'm always trying to encourage my clients to keep these topped up because they are just fantastic resources. So we talked a little bit about the strengths of homeopathy. And these low potencies, we call them 6C, that's only gone through a certain amount of dilution. So it's still incredibly dilute. It's like 1 drop of the original substance in a swimming pool. We tend to use this strength, potency, for acute infectious disease, first aid, physical situations. The 30Cs that are in most of the kits are great because they bridge the physical and the emotional symptoms. So they're great for both situations. They're also good for what I call, or what are called, generals symptoms, generals situations. So if someone has hay fever, you know, something that's environmental, or period pains, something that happens periodically, 30C is a nice strength. So 200C is a strength that is higher, it's more diluted, and we tend to use it for emotional situations or very intense situations. So you'll see that the childbirth kit is 200C, so that it's matching that intensity of the birth room, of the childbirth, of labor. So we have this, we're matching the energy of what we see in front of us. And homeopaths will prescribe 1M, 10M, LMs, which have much deeper action and can be just absolutely transformative. So when I had that sepia 1M, it was because it was an emotional level. It reached back into the past. So it was a remedy that could go long-standing emotional state. There's a lot locked in that I just didn't even know I had to process. Still here, nearly 62, and still processing, but thank goodness for homeopathy, because I actually don't know if I'd be on the planet if I hadn't taken remedies like Aurum, which is made from gold. And when someone said, you know, I'm processing the darkness, Aurum, the gold, the yellow remedies, the yellow flower essences, if we move into flower essences, are often for depression, for darkness. They literally shine light into the darkness. So I'm honest about that. I don't know if I'd be here if it wasn't for homeopathy. So in many countries, if you're in America, or I'm not sure about Australia, the highest potency you can buy over the counter is 200C. So you might need to work with a homeopath. And I've already said some of this. We look at the intensity of symptoms. And Lucy said this too, that she was taking a remedy every 2 hours when she was traveling. She was taking remedies frequently for the spots on the insect bites. If someone's got a cold, I might say take a remedy 3 times a day. If you just want to try a remedy for, say, you know, your periods are out of whack and you think, oh, that sepia sounds like me, then I would probably say take 1 a day for 5 days or 10 days to give you an idea of the repetition of the remedies. So the more intense the situation, generally speaking, the more frequently we'll take the remedy, because we're matching the intensity of the situation in front of us. And we've alluded to this as well in what Lucy said. So an acute situation is a self-limiting disease, a short-term illness or a functional disturbance like a headache, cold, a sore throat, etc. And it's usually defined with an onset. I feel like I'm just coming down with peak. Let me reach for the pain relief of some sort, which we have in homeopathy, and the resolution when you're sort of blowing your nose, you're blowing the snot out, for instance. Each of these stages might have its own symptoms, so we might be using a sequence of remedies in an acute. A common question, if someone is doing an acute, is should I stop our regular or prescribed remedies? So it's usually, you know, go back to your homeopath, go back to your prescriber and just ask them that if you've suddenly got a cold and you're taking remedies, or you want to take remedies. So chronic illness is something that's long lasting. It's compromising our daily life in some way, and that could be mental, emotional, physical or general, like I said, hay fever, you know, an environmental aspect causing what's going on for us. And, you know, Sam said, and this is really important, this comes back to somebody's question in the chat. Sam said about illness being 80% mental, emotional, 20% physical. Why doesn't everybody get hay fever? Because some people are more sensitive than others, and we will find the symptom sensitivity mainly in the mental, emotional sections of our books. So Lucy mentioned our books. You know, we do have these big books full of symptoms as practitioners. And when you get your first aid kit, half of it is about symptoms and half of it is about the remedies. So you can read about the remedies on those mental, emotional, general and physical levels. So a chronic illness could be mental, emotional, depression, anxiety, feeling sad, or it could be something that is very much more physical for us, even if it has a mental, emotional causation. Often a chronic illness will have an ology. Someone will come in and they say, I've got some kind of pathology. And so we might have to work just at that level for a little while because that person's had a lot of drugs, there's change in the tissue. And so we might give even quite a complicated prescription for that. And then we can get to the mental, emotional. So it is a journey with chronic illness, and we can prescribe for autoimmune disease, inherited disease, and diseases of deficiency. So not everybody gets sick when there's a pathogen out there about to attack us, as the media would love us to believe. Pathogens are bacteria, virus, fungi, protists. They can occur in our food. We have more bacteria inside us than we have cells, and if they're out of balance, as Sam said, then we're going to, you know, manifest problems, symptoms. Is this communicable, or is there a system that needs supporting? So the stronger we are, the more robust we are, the more we move towards optimum health, the less we are affected by these environmental factors. So if we go back, we see there is a big conversation between germ theory and terrain theory. And there's so many people speaking on this, you know, and what happened, as is classic with sugar and fats, homeopathy and mainstream medicine, when something looks like it's not going to make money for the capitalist construct that we exist in right now, most of us, then it tends to get pushed on the back burner, and it's up to people like us to find it and celebrate it and say, well, this is the way I want to live my life, because actually at the end of the day it makes me feel good. So when we get down, susceptibility is what happens. So are we susceptible to the effects of what is out there or not? And that susceptibility can come because we feel a bit broken in some way, and that could be mental, emotional, an overload of environmental factors, and there are many of those in the 20th, 21st century that we can clean out of our system, and homeopathy is an amazing, you know, way of doing that. So let's just see. So just very quickly, what we're looking for in an acute situation is what brought it on, and we've talked about this a bit. We, as homeopaths, we are very interested in the nature of things for people. So how is the pain for you? Is it sharp? Is it dull? Is it dragging? Is it pinching? Is it stinging? Particularly when we've got stuff going on with muscles or the womb. We've got a lot of descriptive pain. Headache, for instance, could be sharp, it could be dull. Where is it occurring in the head? We're interested in that. Doctors not. Doctor's just going to give you a painkiller. So we have modalities to assess, you know, is there a change in the appetite, the thirst? What time of day is it better for or worse for? Where in the body, you know, if someone's got rheumatism, I want to know where it is in the body. Is it load bearing? Is it on the right side or the left? How is it talking to us? Did the pain start in one place and move to another? Is it moving around all over the body and it seems changeable? And I'm thinking, putting a note in the margin like pulsatilla, a changeable rheumatic remedy, meaning that the pain moves around all over the body? Or is it a pain which is better for heat? Is it a pain which is worse for motion, or is it a pain which is better for walking? Lucy talked about this. So we're asking, how is it for you, basically? And I'm just going to quickly go through a few remedies that are mostly in your kit. If somebody had a fever or a flu, we're asking questions like, you've got a low temperature, but you feel absolutely exhausted, compared to another person who has a high temperature and is full of beans. Two different remedies. Arsen Alb reads a low temperature but feels completely exhausted. I cannot tell you how often I heard this during COVID. For me, this was the genus epidemicus. As soon as I saw those people in Wuhan coughing up blood, it was like the remedies Arsen Alb. Whether or not those pictures were real, the description of the disease as it manifested in Wuhan and then in northern Italy, Arsen Alb was the remedy. Low temperature, completely exhausted. So we're looking for pattern as homeopaths, and that's what we've got here, contrasting two remedies: low temperature, high temperature, full of beans, exhausted. How is it for you? Gelsemium is a fever remedy that has a very slow onset. People say, oh, I've been feeling like I'm coming down with something all week. It's almost like go no further, give them gelsemium. And they might qualify that with achy muscles, particularly in the back. Mercurius feels exhausted and sweaty and is sometimes smelly, and it's not relieved by the sweat. When the sweat comes in a fever, we should feel better. It's cooling us down. The body's dealing with the fever. The heat, there's a whole action we could talk about with fever. It's an intelligent process to burn off that pathogen that has taken hold, and the sweat, the release, the relief, the returning to normal is important. But Mercurius does not feel better for the sweat. Eupatorium perfoliatum is a remedy for aching in the bones with the fever, especially the wrists. So that idea of location. Pulsatilla will be clingy. They'll want you around, they'll just want you to kind of nurture them and look after them. I haven't mentioned Bryonia here. Bryonia, you just sort of ask them a question. Every movement for Bryonia hurts them. So even using their brain to answer your question irritates them. So you kind of, with Bryonia, you generally throw the remedy in the room and close the door quickly because they're just so irritated. Them reaching for the remedy will make them irritated, but it is curative. So, and then Chamomilla is a very cross, if you've got the cross baby with the fever. So just to give you a little idea, oh, sorry, I did put Bryonia at the bottom there. So I'm just going to finish up with where you can find a homeopath and then see if there's any general questions. Where I can find homeopathy. So you can go and see a homeopath. If you're listening to this and you think, wow, I want to try this, go and see a homeopath. There's loads of us about. You can find homeopathic remedies in some health stores. We have UK chemists that stock homeopathy. I just mentioned a couple in London, Gould's in Camden, because I live in London, Gould's in Camden and Mysteries in Southend Green, which is handy because the guy at Gould's is Jewish, so he's not there on a Saturday, but he's there on a Sunday, and Mysteries is open every day. So it's useful to have places to send your clients when they haven't stocked their kits up, basically. Many chemists in Europe have homeopathy, and there are brands, and the Europeans tend to use a lot more combination remedies than we lead with in the UK. So and when I went to South Africa recently, you're allowed to label the bottles with what the remedies are for. So I could pick up a remedy for tinnitus. I could pick up a remedy for a colleague who had aches and pains. I could pick up, because it was on the label. We're not allowed to do that in Europe. We're allowed to put the name on. So we're still in Europe as far as that's concerned. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen post-Brexit. I think we're probably last in line to get relabeling. But we have homeopathic pharmacies that will send out remedies all over the world. So there's Ainsworth's, Helios and Nelson's that are in the West End, and you can just email them or use their websites. Freeman's is in Glasgow. A lot of homeopaths go to Freeman's because they have some of the small remedies that are harder to get hold of. And then there's a lovely, very traditional pharmacy called Galen's that's still in operation. In States, you have Highlands. So find the homeopathic source in your town. And then I wanted to just finish with share the love, because, there's a lot of love to share with homeopathy. So that's me. I'm going to unpin myself. And yeah, any questions I can see one in the chat box. Let's see. Does homeopathy align with germ theory or terrain or something else? Pretty much terrain theory. Sort yourself out and you'll be fine, but take your kit for when you meet, a challenge. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I'll just add to that actually, from the point of view of the terrain theory, that Bécham's theory is that basically when we get sick, that when there's something that comes in that the body needs to address, essentially the bacteria are capable of mutating into a different version of themselves. So basically that's what then creates a fever, so that the body then can burn it off and push it out or do whatever it needs to do. Because the bacteria that are in our gut don't die. So when we die and we're buried and we decompose into the earth, those bacteria mutate again, because they are what decompose the body and take it back to the earth. So those that they have a role. They're cyclical. They are our connection with the earth in very many ways, and they are there to to keep us safe properly, as opposed to some of the other stuff that we're told keeps us safe. Hope that helps.
Cool. Any questions, thoughts, jingles? Write us a song, Pete.
There was a question in the chat from Diane about mosquito bites. I don't know if you saw that one.
Oh, I didn't. Can you
Suggestions for
me?
remedies for mosquito bites, please. They love me in the summer.
Oh, this is why we need to get Lucy back on, seeing as she's the queen. Where is she?
Yeah.
Does Lucy go on?
She came back in and went, but I appreciate
Maybe she's
she's
left.
on a windy ridge somewhere. Got lots of remedies. It's worth kind of have a think about how it is for you. She was saying that she gets really irritated and feels attacked. So she would take a remedy called Staphylococcus aureus. I'll just maybe pop that in the chat box. I'm just going to mention the ones that are in the first aid kits. So Staphylococcus aureus for feeling attacked. I've met a very few people who take Staphylococcus aureus every day when they go away, with a view to preventing the bites, for whom that has worked. I don't know if you want to throw that in, Sam. Some people, it's definitely helped. So we're looking at using a remedy prophylactically, preventatively. Cantharis, Spanish fly, hugely itchy. So if it's incredibly itchy, cannot stop scratching, Cantharis is a really good remedy. There's another remedy called Caladium that's quite similar. So Caladium. And another remedy called Ledum or Ledum that Lucy talked about as well. I can't remember what she was using that for, but that's a good insect bite remedy. If you get bitten, stung, and you get very, very swollen, then there's a remedy called Apis Mel. So you can see that differentiation there between the remedies. How is it for you? And actually, I tend to put all of those together, those 4 that I mentioned, and I just call it my insect bite combo, and I tend to lead with that. And it's great. It doesn't stop me getting bitten, but those bites do not bother me. So yeah, any other questions in there? Any other thoughts? How does this deal with health, stress, anxiety? Yeah, so Sam mentioned Natmur. Natmur is one of the remedies that I've been using a lot recently for current stresses and anxieties that I'm seeing in clients. So a lot on people's mind, a lot of anxiety, a lot of held in worrying about things that are coming up. So we see remedies being needed. We are a collective for the collective, which is really quite interesting. So Natmur can be a very helpful remedy for somebody who overstresses, who thinks about things a lot. We have a remedy in the kit that I've also been prescribing called Argnit. Argnit is a remedy for people who anticipate, particularly scared about things like flying, crossing a bridge over water, taking an exam. It's a classic remedy for white coat syndrome. If you don't like going to the dentist, for instance, or the doctor, your high blood pressure goes up when you go to the doctor. Try taking arginine before, so you might not remember the names of the remedies, but just to know that there are solutions. And I've only mentioned 2 there, but there's many, many remedies on that. I just wondered.
Another one, just to add, which is very common for that, is arsenicum. Arsenicum sits very much where you're feeling the anxiety in your stomach, because it does normally show in a certain part of your body. So if they're particularly then affecting your digestion, you're feeling a little bit sick. You could even be sick with arsenicum. Arsenicum is a very good remedy for vomiting, and for digestive upsets, including food poisoning. But the other thing I would just layer in quickly there is if we're looking at stress and anxiety, and Caroline's just referenced the collective, we've got to start looking at cortisol. We have to start looking at the stress hormone itself and looking at ways that we can manage that process within our body, because we are part of a collective. And so we are, even if we're trying to keep away from the mainstream news and mainstream media, there are plenty within the collective who are not. So there is that fear energy and frequency that's being pumped out all the time. And so it is really for us to find our own coping mechanisms with that. And the answer will be different for many. For some, it will be going out and sitting in nature and hugging a tree. For others, it will be swimming in the wild water and recalibrating yourself literally, with the natural water and the flow. For others, it'll be doing yoga, breath work. For others, it'll be going to a sound bath. And all of these things, thankfully, are becoming more and more available for us, not coincidentally, of course, so that we can have these coping mechanisms to deal with the stress. So it is fundamentally, if you're feeling anxiety, it is about noticing where it is in your body, noticing if it's coming from your own thoughts, finding ways to release those thoughts, those emotions. Do you need to go and shout? Literally. I had to do that the other day. Like, I was driving my car, I literally had to pull into a lay-by, and I found myself literally roaring like a lion into the middle of the countryside. And I thought, you know what, if anyone comes past me right now, they're probably going to think I'm some kind of lunatic. But I'm just going to allow the pressure to come out of the pressure cooker, because do you know what? We are in the intensity of this right now. And if we don't release it from ourselves, with the intention of it's being transmuted and, going back to source, etc., otherwise we're going to find ourselves in situations where you're just yelling at people, which is not the solution, because you're projecting onto other people, which is what we're trying to get away from. That's the pattern we're trying to break. So I just thought I'd add that into the mix.
Absolutely. And I was just going to come back with cortisol as a remedy, of course, is a sarcode. So it's made from the expression of the adrenal glands. And, it's actually made from that secretion. And I've been giving that as a homeopathic remedy to quite a lot of people recently. So another aspect of where we are now, and certainly where we've been in the last few years, was this sense of endurance, of needing endurance, strength, stamina for what we're going through, because it was 3 weeks flat in the curve, and so I'm just going to mention flower essences that I work with, as well as the homeopathy. And Ian White, who works with he brought through the Australian bush flower essences, brought out a new essence called Boost during that period of time, because he recognized people needed that lift. So we can use a homeopathic remedy like cortisol for supporting the system, which is getting exhausted. And we might use that alongside a more conventional remedy like Natmur or Arginine or arsenicum in this as many thousands of remedies, we might decide to support the nervous system with a tissue salt. Now, these are very low strength homeopathic remedies, and there's one called Phos, and these are very readily available. And we might say, do you know what, if I take that a couple of times a day, it just takes the edge off things for me, and I feel so much better, and I can cope, I can breathe, rather than immediately knee jerk when I meet, you know, whatever the aggravant is.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And I
yeah,
noticed someone's asked about panic attacks, and actually, you
yeah,
know, in the acute moment of a panic attack, we're probably looking at something like aconite that you could take in that moment. There is actually a really nice combination remedy that I have used myself that's called the paramedic mix, and I've used that myself when my father died, and my sister came up, and the pair of us were just trying to digest the shock, because it was very soon after my mother died, and the pair of us were both kind of sort of trying to deal with this kind of really intense emotional kind of grief. And I had this when my sister was kind of going through her kind of processing in the real shock stage. I gave her some of this paramedic mix, and it kind of calmed her down. And then I kind of started to kind of then my wave started to come through, and then she started rummaging in my pocket to give me some, you know, and then I was having it. And then after a while, my husband, you know, my ex-husband, who was complete, I have to say, cynic about homeopathy, completely thought it was a load of nonsense. After a while, actually, as I was having a complete breakdown, I remember him saying to my sister, "Where is that remedy? Get it out of her pocket. I want some now." And so even in his height of his absolute cynicism, he could see the effect. He could see how it was actually immediately helping to just calm down the intense emotional process. But as Caroline said, the nervous system, it is about, at the moment, it's our nervous system that's dealing with these changes on the earth right now, you know, these intense kind of frequencies that are coming in. So the more we can support the nervous system, the KIs, you know, in low potency tissue salts, very, very good. Phos, particularly, as Caroline mentioned. So
yeah. And I wanted to just say there, when, you know, there's a couple of things. There's a really nice message that's just coming from Tamara that I was going to respond to as well. But you were saying about your ex-husband reaching for the remedy and saying, I want some. I talked about using remedies in the birth room. And so often, it just sounds crazy, but, you know, men, just a bit of a loose end, not quite sure what to do, love having the homeopathy kit and recognizing the states, because we've done a little kind of chat beforehand about which remedies to use, and go, oh, I think you need this now, I think you need that now, and actually getting with the birth process and coming out, you know, feeling very empowered that they were there as part of the process and able to support their partner while she was laboring. And, you know, again, when Lucy was first talking, I was thinking about, you know, there are a number of clients who say things like they took a kit to India and they've traveled to India, you know, many times expecting to come back with food poisoning. I'm like, really? Is that your expectation of travel? I'm horrified by that personally, you know. And so they'd come back from India and they go, I was the queen of remedies. I was giving remedies to my friends and I was doing this and I was doing that and I didn't get sick. And I was like, yep, thumbs up for homeopathy, you know. So, and Tamara just put a really beautiful message in about her mum and how she was giving arginate to help her mum with fear of death and loosen the mucus, and nurses asking her what she was doing. And when my dad was dying, and the ward was just full of noise. He wasn't actually in the right ward for his pathology at that point. And it was just full of beeps and noise, and you couldn't even speak without a beep going off. And I just put all the remedies and some, I did say don't store your remedies next to essential oils as a rule of thumb, but there are actually only a few essential oils that we don't use with homeopathy because they might antidote it. So I put remedies, I put essential oils into some oil and some massage lotion, put it in a big pot, and just wrote on it, you know, my dad's name, don't remove this. And we would massage his feet every day with the remedy, because, you know, we weren't able to give him the remedy. So we do, you know, we can absorb remedies transdermally. We could put them in the bath, for instance, for sunburn. But thanks for that, Tamara, because you just reminded me that, you know, we can deliver remedies in many ways. And then someone, a daughter, Tamara as well, supported you before and during heart surgery with the agreement of the surgeon, which is amazing. You know, so we can use remedies for post-operative care. And a friend of mine had a C-section. It was a long, long time ago, 25 years ago. And I was able to go into the birth room with my remedy kit and give remedies alongside the anaesthetist. And we were chatting about our different potions. And she came out of that. Lily was born. And a week later, the nurses said to her, cannot believe your scar tissue healing. You could wear a bikini, you know, and it was like, wow, that is the power of homeopathy, you know, when used appropriately. So Andrew, you wanted to ask something.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, just firstly, I know we've run over schedule, but it's been absolutely fascinating. I've loved every minute of it. I'm just buzzing, loving it. Thank you so much for all your knowledge and wisdom and the way you've shared it. Hey, I had a big question that came up for me. I don't know. I think it's a crazy question, but I'll ask it anyway. What do you think natural life expectancy is if all those four minds were balanced, the spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical? What would be our actual life expectancy, do you think?
I'm going to answer that with, I was listening to someone with some, you know, doctor credentials, can't remember what kind of doctor. And apparently the human genome is sort of designed to last 120 years. Sam, have you got any, or anybody else got any?
Have a perspective on that one. This new light technology that I'm working with is fascinating, because one of the reasons that the human body dies at the age that it does at the moment is because as we age, our number of stem cells decline. So by the time we get to the age of 60, we probably only have about 20% of our stem cells left. Right. So we know that one of the roles of the stem cells, for example, is to heal. It goes, they go and target wherever the body that needs it. So if, for example, when I certainly witnessed this in my parents anyway, my dad particularly, bless him, in his final years, you know, he'd literally brush past a chair or something, and then he'd have this hideous wound on his leg. It would take weeks, if not months, to heal, but by which time he'd already done the same again, you know. If only I'd known about this light technology then, you know, he would probably still be here now, but, you know, that was his time to exit, and that's okay. But the point of this stem cell, these light wave technology I'm talking about, is it reactivates your dormant stem cells. So actually what people are starting to find when they use them for a period of time is that your body has got the resources to start to not just heal itself, but to regenerate. And I have seen some incredible results with this technology. And this is what I mean by it's exciting. So when you're talking about, because one of the reasons why in the end we die is because there's no, you know, the stem cells have gone. That's just one of the reasons. I'm not saying it's all the reasons, but it's certainly a big contributing factor, because the body doesn't have the resources to heal itself or to regenerate, more importantly, to regenerate healthy cells. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about in terms of energy and frequency, because one of the reasons that the cells, when they come to recreate the new cells, if they don't have the right resources, the resources will be, yes, eating the right food, nutrition, for example, but with that, it's a huge part of that is the energy, is the frequency. And if they're not managing to be at the right frequency, like I said in my presentation, it's been proven that if you can get the cells to be at the right frequency, they will heal themselves. And you know, I can say in this forum that includes cancer cells. You know, this has been shown in medical tests. There's a guy who did an amazing TED talk. Can't remember his name off the top of my head, which is really annoying. But he started life as a music teacher, and he's gone on to basically prove that if you in a lab properly done, and if you carrying on the work really of Raymond Reif that we were talking about at the end 100 years ago, that basically it's this, using the analogy of the opera singer who can sing at a certain pitch and shatter a glass, right? That's what we're talking about. And he's basically taken that same principle and shown how you can shatter a cancer cell. So if we're looking at the things that basically kill the majority of people at the moment, cancer is a huge one of those, then these light frequencies, the frequency medicine is the way forward, without a doubt. And just to add a little note on the end of that, Ken asked a question about music. And yes, of course, music is sound and it's frequency. So it is about, however, listening to the right frequency. And we know that again, right? So if you're listening to a piece of chilled out classical music, you're not going to have the same response in your body as you are if you're at a rave and you're dancing to like some really loud rock music or whatever, you know. And it's not, that's not something that you think, oh, I think I'm going to do this now. It's a natural response to the music. But two very healing hertz for basically just relaxation and realigning of either 432 or 528, both of which you can find on Spotify or YouTube. 528 particularly is very lovely and is very connecting with the earth. So I hope that helps.
Great. Any other questions to throw in there? I know something dropped into my mind as you were speaking, Sam, and since it's dropped out of my mind, I'm like, perhaps we've talked enough.
Oh, I love the fact that Pete's already put music at 432, or did you say that and respond? Copy? Did you put that on?
Put that just before you brought it up. So
Yes.
synchronicity.
Love it, love it. Yeah. So for me, yeah, unless there's any other questions, I've kind of covered the points that I was going to make. Ken.
Yeah. Ken, you need to unmute.
I hope this doesn't come across as too much of a jumble, but yes, I've been writing about music for 50 years, so I wondered about that. Is it possible, I mean, I am far away from where you are. Is it possible to have any sort of one-on-one communications with any of the three of you on this site or that other one whose name we don't mention when we are on Campfire? And it's not Twitter because I never did that anyway.
I think we do personal consultations, Ken, online. So I don't know.
I may send you friend requests on that other site. I am getting more skeptical of conventional medication, medicine. I've had a problem. I have a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, and I've had constipation. I'm kind of gross. And sometimes the other, but I think the other depends on what I'm eating. And I seem to have gotten rid of that by not eating whatever it was that caused it. I can't even remember anymore. So much stress. And Andrew, are you a music fan? Can I reach you through Campfire, or should I go to that other site? Or, I'm really curious to know about the Australian music scene. Sorry to get off topic, but I am a music fanatic. So
yeah, contact me through Campfire. That's fine, Ken. No worries.
Give my regards to the bushwhackers when you know.
Thanks, Ken. I had a message which I think was intended for everyone, but it's come through to me from Ruth. Are you three open to being contacted for one-to-one, and do you work remotely? Yeah, I think perhaps if we go in the chat on Campfire around this meeting, or the separate thread I put this morning, that might be a good place to start communication.
I've always been so impressed with all the people who come to these meetings. Always.
Thank you for all of that. Yeah, most us and most homeopaths these days work online. you know, and for myself, I was 3 times as busy through COVID and started to do a lot of courses and workshops online. Because, you know, historically homeopathy was the mums were the carers for the family. That's how it is still. And so mums would come wanting to come to a homeopathy workshop but unable to come because, you know, it would be, I don't know, football morning, drama afternoon, this after school, that, you know, so whatever time we factored a homeopathy workshop, the people that wanted to come found it hardest to come to, whereas other subjects a little bit easier. So of course lockdown happened and it was like, hey, I'm here, you can arrive, you can watch it again. You know, Zoom makes all that kind of possible. So, and the other thing that's happened is, you know, and this is why we're here today, is that people started to question the system. So there's some incredible I'm not sure if we put that on the last slide there, but there are some incredible resources like podcasts, online short courses, you know. So I encourage you, if this has piqued your interest, even if you're just like, do you know what, I want to look at remedies for a specific, like anxiety, someone will be doing a short course in it. And if they're not, then, you know, approach me, Sam or Lucy, and say, hey, would you do a short course in first aid for travel or anxiety or gut health? Because, you know, all of that is so much more possible. It's so easy.
Right. And I think we all of us do online workshops as well. So, you know, if you want to connect with us with some of those, you know, just contact us separately. I have one coming up, I think on the 12th of June or something, that's on my website if you wanted to join. But equally, if there was something that, you know, you'd like us to come back and deep dive into a little bit more, I'd certainly be willing to come back and do this on, you know, this platform. So whatever suits.
Oh, over to you, Pete, I think.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you so much, Caroline, Lucy and Sam, for your very intriguing, very fascinating tour through the world of homeopathy. It certainly piqued my interest, and I'm sure has done for many people here, everyone, I would imagine. So yeah, I'd like to thank you, and it's been a really great session. So thank you everyone for coming and being part of it, and see you on Campfire or elsewhere. Thank you.
Pete, thanks for everything over the years. What else can I say?
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you. Thanks, Rex.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Thank you.
And Steel Eyes Pan forever. Anyway.
Thanks, everyone. That was brilliant. Yeah, really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really good.